military wanting to take control of those go you can say out of control. So some even tries to yell at police because they ran out of food. So they say, "Come on, just arrest me unless because I can't have food in the jail. I can't have food in my house." So they yell at the police, something like
Because
that.
I remember when they locked down Wuhan at the very beginning of the pandemic. Okay, I mean, my understanding, I mean, I'm not there, but my understanding from reading papers was that the government brought food, whether it was the military or some other government officials, the government brought food to everybody, so nobody had to go out and get groceries.
Hmm.
And so what-
Mm. They like they dispatched some of them, but a lot of them are intercepted by those powers. So if you understand Chinese, you can, of course, if you understand Chinese, you see those videos and the reporters that from the anti-CCP government and media, then you understand how severe this time it is because it's the same. Those uh, who can resell those things or who has resources to intercept those donation vegetables, anything. They will just intercept and resell it. So only a little of them can be dispatched directly to the citizens. Yeah. So yeah, you can say it's the both sides are only believe what they believe. So you can say CCP government is doing the propaganda, or you can say the anti-CCP news media are doing their propaganda as well. But you can ask your friends if you have friends in Shanghai. They will tell you different stories. Oh, sorry. Should we come back to the tech news? And maybe something related is that containers outside the Shanghai port, uh, it's causing trouble for the supply chains.
Okay,
I think I read an article now that I'm going to pin it on top. It says 23 cities are in lockdown or full or partial lockdown and affecting 193 million people.
okay. Any other COVID news anyone wants to get into? Okay. Then we go into Ukraine. We're skipping Will Smith, thank God, and no offense to Will and Jada. The the top. Well, there's a whole bunch of updates since we met last time, 24 hours ago. Well, no, 22 hours ago. And the first one's from CNBC 18 minutes ago. It even says it says live. This is live news. I've never seen Google do this. I'm looking at, if you search Google for the word Ukraine and then click on news, instead of searching for videos or maps or videos, you search for news. And then you search for the past 24 hours, you'll see a list of articles in the past 24 hours about Ukraine. And the top one is CNBC and the Washington Post, and they both say live next to them with a little red indicator, because one of them is from CNBC, it's 18 minutes ago, and the one from the Washington Post is an hour ago. So the one from CNBC says 18 minutes ago, Russian forces, obviously in Ukraine, used civilians as human shields. Ukraine urges NATO to provide more military equipment. Ukraine's foreign minister has met with G7 and NATO leaders in Brussels one day after the U.S. announced new penalties on Russia. I guess one of the new revelations is that the Russian forces used civilians as human shields. Makes sense because they're right in there, surrounded by civilians, and that could explain why there's so many dead civilians when they go into those towns where the Russians were fleeing. Maybe the Russians didn't really kill them directly, but they were using them as human shields, and then they became kind of casualties.
They actually use young not young kids but kids sitting on top of the tanks to prevent them from launching javelins at them. So they actually have kids, and they are. So there are pictures. Your friend, the Twitter account we discussed. There is pictures in his flow of people being bound. They have used rope to tangle them to the top of the tank
Get out of
that they're
here.
driving through.
Get out of here. Hold on. Hold on.
Yeah,
Somebody DM me that, Johan. I know who
Yeah,
you're
I
talking
will try. I will try to find
about.
it.
I have
It's
him
a
right here.
couple of
Here it is.
hours ago since I scrolled by
Ilya.
it, and that was
Ilya.
just horrid.
I got it. I have him right here. So Russian tank goes down. It shows a front row view of a tank being taken down, and then it shows Bucha survivors and a dog and some boats being blown up in the ocean, and Metallica's helping Ukraine with a special shirt and for sale on their website. How many hours ago was this?
I'm also scrolling. Since there are so many in his threads, I need to find it again.
Okay,
Sorry,
that's
I
right.
shouldn't have brought it up unless I had the link. Sorry for that one.
But that's similar to another story where they were telling hostages that they had to stay in, for example, a building where the soldiers were, so the hostages would be in the basement and the soldiers would be on the main floor, for example. So it's quite common.
yeah. The this is Valerie. The Ukrainians have in civilian life they would have been drone enthusiasts, but now actually teams that, let alone finding the tanks to destroy the Russian tanks, but are filming these kinds of situations. And there's one I don't know if it's Bucha, but one of those suburbs of Kyiv where. People were driving and then they saw there was a checkpoint. They stopped to turn around, and the people even got out of the car and put their hands up, and you could see the Russians just shooting them and then searching their bodies for information or whatever, and then dragging people from the car. So there is live footage. And this was, I think it was CNN or BBC that was doing a story on these drone teams that are part now of the military in Ukraine. This is Valerie. I'm done speaking.
That's wild. Tying a kid to the top of a tank as a holy cow. That's some. That's a whole.
It was not one; it was three, and they were young. I would say 14, perhaps. Not younger than that, but they were bound. Three people were bound together. Two girls and one what looks like a boy was tied together on top of one of these battle tanks. But I'm scrolling. The thing is, there's so many thousands of pictures here.
Okay. So other articles in the past 24 hours. Um, 1 second here. Anyone have any articles from the past 24 hours? Any updates on Ukraine? Anyone want to share?
I saw one that's it's about the U.S. politics. I'm not sure why this happened, but it says six GOP House members opposed a bill meant to document and preserve evidence of war crimes during Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, oh, so where this bill passed or not, with those six House representatives opposed list. I think it's from insiders, but so maybe they're trying to make them to change their ideas about the post bills document Russia's crime.
So 6 hours ago, CNBC reported that China says Russia cannot be blamed for civilian deaths in Ukraine until "quote unquote" a full picture is clear. And Ethereum creator Vitalik Buterin donates $5 million of Ethereum to aid Ukraine. Russian Lieutenant Colonel Gregory Putrunin, military police chief of Sarama, has been killed in Ukraine. 6 GOP House members voted against a bill to document and preserve Russian war crimes during invasion of Ukraine. And I think those are, it says, according to Turkish defense industry sources, Turkey has sent 16 more drones to Ukraine. 7 Republicans voted against investigating war crimes in Ukraine. There you go. Those are your updates for today. U.S. will provide 10 anti-tank systems for every Russian tank in Ukraine. No, come on. Maybe 10 rockets per tank, if that's what you mean by an anti-tank system. UN to vote on suspending Russia from Human Rights Council over Ukraine. There you go. That's good. No doubt that'll pass, with the exception of the usual suspects. Portugal will send defensive and offensive war material to Ukraine. Austria donates 154 tons of potato seeds to Ukraine. Okay. Greece formally rejects U.S. proposal to supply Ukraine with additional Russian-made weapon systems. Who cares what Greece thinks about a U.S. proposal? Czech Republic becomes first NATO country to send tanks to Ukraine. There you go, Czech Republic. It's funny how so many details of the world wars, of who did what, is well remembered, especially among Europeans, because that's where it was really the bulk of it, of the action was, right? So the Europeans have a keen memory for who did what. And Americans, we were just we tried to avoid getting involved, honestly. And that's worth remembering, that in especially World War II, we really, 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 really resisted. And we were being dragged into it, and then we, put one toe in it, and next thing you know, we got pulled into it. But we really intended to not get involved. And we did, even though we knew we didn't want to. And that's why this Ukraine thing is such a hot potato.
So
And
Tyler, on that point, I
yeah,
mean, even though I wanted to kind of like, but the U.S. Senate unanimously, and the United States Senate, there's almost never does anything unanimously anymore. But they approved the Lend Lease Act for Ukraine. So the Lend Lease Act was from World War II. So they basically brought it back, and it's a way of getting weapons to a country that can't afford them. So we had done that for Great Britain in 1940 when Churchill said, "I don't have money anymore," and so we basically extended credit. You know, it was buy now, pay later. Is Tyler your favorite thing? It
yeah.
was buy now, pay later for weapons, and so we just did that for Ukraine, basically resurrecting something from the 1940s.
It took England until very recently to pay that off, though, right? So quite a long time.
I just found a few more headlines. Germany intercepts Russian conversations on indiscriminate killings in Ukraine. That's from the Washington Post. And NATO Secretary General says he agrees that Ukraine is fighting a defensive war. This distinction between offensive weapons and defensive weapons doesn't actually have any technical meaning. Ireland supports Ukraine's fast track to join the EU. Okay.
I have a 3-minute Peter Zahan update if you want to hear it.
Okay, go for it.
All right.
Oh, hold on. This will hold my. I just found a humdinger. It says, U.S. threatens China with sanctions if it supports Russia's war in Ukraine. Ooh, 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 ooh. Watch out. That's hot shit right there, because the U.S. If you can't sense America's thirst, we are so thirsty to sanction China. We are beyond. We are. If you can't hear the hands ringing in the U.S. over how can we get China in the hot seat and get a lot of these sanctions happening on China. We would love to see what's happening to Russia currently happen to China, to the degree that it doesn't become a gun to our own head, which to a degree it will be. And I mean, even this whole issue with the pipelines in Germany. Germany wants to get off of the Russian energy, but it will cause a 3% spike in inflation, and that might lead to uncontrollable inflation and make it impossible soft landing. And yeah, we get it. We get it. We got that.
The economic activity between the United States and China is exponentially
I know.
higher. And
That's
okay, so it would be. I
and
think that would be a
not just
colossal mistake. Yeah.
not just U.S. and China, U.S., China, and everybody. That's what would
Well,
make
no one's going to do. I mean, we're not going to get international cooperation for that.
we. I think we're going to try and that. I don't think that's going to discourage the desire to figure out ways to do what we can slowly, as methodically as possible, step by step.
I think
In
that's a mistake at this point. It's
yeah,
like opening a two front war.
I think we're going to try and find ways that we can inflict asymmetrical, meaning it will, the brunt of the inconvenience will be felt by China, but not reciprocated.
So are we going to do what Trump had to do? Because the Chinese will then close off their markets again to U.S. agricultural products. So we'll have to write large checks to American farmers to make up for it. I mean, we've been through this
Yeah,
before.
wouldn't be the first
We
time.
did that long ago. What?
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I'm sorry, Tom, you were going to share something that Peter Zehan got into recently.
Jorge, actually. Hold on.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Hey everyone, I wanted to take a break from all the back and forth that's been going on with the Ukraine war and instead address an issue that kind of dates back to the beginning of the war and the causation. There are some people out there who believe that because the United States encouraged the growth of NATO from the old Cold War alliance that ended at the German eastern border, the West German eastern border, to eventually include a number of former Soviet satellites and former Soviet republics, that it is somehow the West's fault or the United States' fault or NATO's fault that Russia is now in a situation where it's pushing back. It's not a ridiculous argument. The Russians definitely feel that they're under pressure. But you have to look at what it is that the Russians ultimately were after and why they feel insecure. Russian territory is a lot of flat open, and it's marginal at best, very cold, very dry in most places. And if you move out of those cold, dry zones, you get into either colder or warmer, drier zones that are even less hospitable. But these zones are not good buffers. There's no real mountains to hunker behind or swamps or even forests. So what Russian strategy has been since the time of Catherine the Great is to expand past the zones that are habitable, past the zones that are really not habitable but still passable, and go until you reach zones that are impassable. The Carpathian Mountains, for example, the Baltic Sea. And the idea is that the Russians can then concentrate their forces in the access points between those barriers. The Polish Gap, the Caucasian coastal approaches. And by concentrating forces there, they can plug the gaps and then no one will come for them. That's the idea, and that's how the Russians see the world. Which means there was never really much of a middle ground here. Because for the Russians to feel secure, they have to control those gaps. Well, those gaps are occupied by people who are not Russian, as are a substantial number of territories around them and between the Russians. From the way they define security, you would have to step away from the defense of and surrender to history and to the Russians a number of countries. Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, and let's not forget the stands, all 5 of them, and the Caucasus, so add in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So for the Russians to feel safe, they need to occupy all these countries, suppress the interests of all of these countries, deny them access to participate in any sort of political or economic exchange with areas outside of the Russian zone. and then have a forward positioned military with 5 million men, complete with nuclear weapons. That is the Russian definition of security. So people who say that it's NATO's fault that expanding into these willing countries where they had votes and plebiscites and ratifications and they were enthusiastic about joining NATO, to say it's NATO's fault that there's a war now, it's not that they're wrong. It's that they're stupid, because that was never an option. All right. That's it from me.
This is Val. I'd like to add on a little on that NATO. That's definitely been in the pop culture news about that. The NATO expansion is at root cause. I think you also have to look at what's happening at the time that is attracting other European countries to NATO. So all we have to do is go back to the late 90s with Chechnya, et cetera. Those things that are happening that also causes insecurity for the European countries. So it's a two-way street. This is Valerie. I'm done speaking.
Okay. BB, while we were listening to that, and thank you for that, Jorge, BB sends in this one from Taiwan, which I will pin to the room. So,
Oh yeah, it's related to the
yeah.
one you just mentioned.
So it says, and it was dated today. U.S. lawmaker proposes bill to punish Chinese threats against Taiwan. Oklahoma Republican Frank Lucas has proposed a bill in the House of Representatives that would force Chinese banks out of certain international financial mechanisms should Beijing threaten Taiwan. Oh, wow. I wonder, are we going to start trying to find ways to punish China economically, asymmetrically, in ways that won't really hurt us, but would hurt that? Well, there it fucking is, right fucking there. That's it. That's exactly what I was talking about. The
But do we
ostracized.
think that
Hold on,
this is
hold on,
wise
hold on,
to
hold on, hold on. Wait. Listen to the name of the act that this guy named this thing. It's called the Ostracized China Act. If that doesn't make abundantly clear the vision, the plan that the lawmakers in DC are rubbing their hands, trying to figure out how to do exactly what this guy is exactly doing. This is what they're doing. This is what the U.S. is busy doing right now, trying to figure out how to ostracize China. Perfectly, as I've said, they would be doing going back since the beginning of Tech News, about a year ago. So here we go. Here it's coming. Here we have the name of a bill, and there it is. We want to do this. We want to
I'm
ostracize
telling you,
China.
this is poor timing. It's poor timing, Tyler. I see a huge concern here because China has been on the fence with what's going on with Russia. They've been playing it very safe. If you apply pressure, though, you then force them to align with Russia in order to protect themselves. We don't really want that in this moment. I think this is short-sighted.
Yes,
Very short sighted. And you know what? I mean, I don't know. I think we look like idiots. I think in history, when we look back at it, we'll say this was so obvious and we took all the wrong steps.
By the way, he's one
yep.
congressman. I'm going to point something out.
I'm
He's
not
one
saying I'm
congressman.
not saying he's more than one congressman. I totally get that he's
No,
one dude
no,
on
okay,
Capitol
no, let me explain who he is, though. So,
Hill.
unless he's got co-sponsors, he's one congressman who
Yep.
has a particularly unique political situation right now in
Yep.
Oklahoma because even the Republicans can't figure out who they're running against. They might be running against each other because there's a whole issue of what the district lines are going to be. Okay, and he's not sure if he's got Trump's support, and everyone's trying to. There was one guy who just dropped out because of. Of an existing congressman that just dropped out and said, I'm done, I'm retiring because of the whole thing with the lines and Trump and whatever. So, I mean, we should not interpret Frank Lucas introducing a bill as any kind of a national anything. That's about, unless he's got like co-sponsors, which I don't know if he does. I don't think he does. That's basically, this is all about Frank Lucas and what's going on in Oklahoma, and like we should not blow this out of proportion. Okay, and always be very careful because there's always a story. Somebody introduced a bill. Less than 5% of bills that are introduced can even clear Congress. Okay, 95% of the time they die somewhere before they even get to the president's desk. And I can't believe how many stories there are about someone introduced a bill. You know, if they introduced a bill with 40 co-sponsors, that's something. When they introduce a bill by themselves, unless they're the majority leader or they're the speaker or something, who cares?
I
That's the
agree.
problem with all these hawks. I mean, likes of Dick Cheney, basically, just not really looking at what's going to create impact in the world, like when you actually make those decisions. I mean, just look at it like if you actually rewind back 20 years ago, what sort of impact is being created, like just by going in Afghanistan. At that point in time, you could have actually gone in, come out like after 6 months or a year or two, and just create this, whatever you wanted to do at that particular time, just achieve that and come out of it. Now, what you have done in past 20 years, that given that space to China and rest likes of the power of China to actually flourish over the time and buy their products and make them big and big and big, while you are all with full your powers and resources are actually occupied in one nation. Now, exactly similar thing is happening. For next 20 years, you're going to be going into this strategy where you're actually taking on all this, hands-on approach with two of the nations, biggest nation, and now this time is not going to be just, the person who's going to be actually taking you and occupying you in the land which you are not really fully know the landscape, but this time is going to be, sitting outside and taking care of the actual, nuclear nations, which can actually take care of all your interest and get into the level where, ultimately you're going to be head on with the two major nations. And you think that you're going to go in all the way where, their influence is going to be decreased over the time. It's not going to happen because they have already built up in past 10, 15 years their influence in the region. You have come out of the actual Middle East where these nations are not actually have the same influence what you had, 10 years ago. And all of a sudden now they are actually pouring in money, especially China. I mean, look at it, the amount of money has gone in, the Iran and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and Turkey now is building this relationship. So once you actually talk about this kind of like influence, which is bordering or like putting sanction over it, how you can actually implement those sanctions? That's what the biggest question mark is. You could do that with Russia, but how are you going to do that with China? Uh, I mean, this just literally inconceivable to actually put those, sanctions around it and barricading all that country, basically.
Okay, are we ready for the big tech stories of today? I think we are. Here we go. There we go. Air horn.
Yes.
Here we go. The big stories for Thursday, April 7th, 2022. The top story today is that the Financial Times says they have sources that Meta, formerly known as Facebook, has drawn up plans to add something called social tokens. Also, lending services and non blockchain virtual currency. Is that what we want? We want a non blockchain digital currency?
You know
Uh,
what they're calling within their company, within Meta, the company? They're
I
calling
didn't.
it Zuckbucks.
Yes. Internal employees are calling them Zuckbucks. Meta has drawn up plans to introduce virtual coins, not on a blockchain, tokens, and lending services into its apps. Of course, it wants to do that. It wants part of that sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy transactional economy, digital economy that is about to explode. Explode. It's the same economy that I was just talking about as to why I believe some dude named Elon Musk just bought a substantial, the biggest share of Twitter, 9.1%. Why would Elon Musk buy such a significant stake of a company he's been so critical about? Well, because that company, which was previously a social network primarily, is about to become potentially the main way people transact with stores of value and purchasing of products and services. Imagine if PayPal had a social network, with pretty much everyone on it, like Oprah Winfrey and the fucking Pope and Mariah Carey and the BTS and every big person you ever heard of. Imagine PayPal had that. And then imagine they had every product and service that you wanted to buy, like Amazon. Imagine PayPal had Amazon and Facebook merged into one. Wouldn't that be hot shit? Well, Twitter does have Twitter as a network, and it has already been testing products and services for sale, and they've got it where you can go see it right effing now. They've greenlit certain Twitter accounts to have a shopping cart on their Twitter profile above their top pinned tweet and below their bio. It's a swiping carousel of products and services that people can sell. The question is, how will you pay for it, and how will they receive those payments? That's the hot shit, sweet, juicy opportunity of a lifetime.
Tyler.
Hold that thought, MA,
Okay.
because Elon Musk built PayPal. So if the guy who was one of the lead dudes, the former CEO of PayPal, has always dreamed that this day would come where there would be this massive social network of products and services, digital products and services with a digital form of payments between everybody internationally, magically. And if you are the one enabling those transactions, oh, you are in the bird dog seat, my friend. You are in the crow's nest. You are the hot shit. You are the one enabling all of those transactions. That's the hotness. That's the ring, the precious. The precious, like the Lord of the Rings Gollum, he wanted that ring. That's what this is, and that's where
Where's that
Twitter.
soundbite, Tyler? That's a great soundbite to add.
So Twitter. Did you hear that sound? Did somebody hear a sound? I think I just heard a sound. Did
Yeah,
somebody?
a cash register.
I thought I heard a cash register. Maybe it's just me. I think Elon's hearing it
No, it's not. It was me doing the precious sound.
too. So the point is, it's not a coincidence that Facebook is also having the same idea at the same time, because that's how hot this idea is. And PayPal is in no position to even attempt this idea, because no one's going to fucking make a social network out of fucking PayPal. And no one's going to make a social network out of Amazon. That is not going to happen. But the social networks have an opportunity to add the products and services and the payments. That's far easier than the payment systems adding the social networks, or the e-commerce shops adding the social network piece. Having the social network piece is the difficult part. Twitter and TikTok and Snapchat and a few others are in perfect positions to attempt this. Twitter most of all, I think. And here we go. And what do you know? Wow, what a coincidence. Elon Musk, the guy behind PayPal, who must have envisioned this day would come, is now throwing down and buying nearly 10% of the company, just as they're about to announce all of this. I may go ahead.
But Tyler,
Tyler.
remember a couple of things though. I mean, is Amazon has the ability to deliver. They have all the logistics for delivery that Facebook and Twitter don't have yet. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, they could use FedEx, I guess, and everything. They could even use Amazon, maybe, if Amazon. But I don't know if Amazon would do it. But I mean, so that's a big difference. You could say Amazon won't, it's not a social network, but I mean, having those logistics for that next day delivery is crucially important. And by the way, on the Zuckbucks, this is the worst thing for Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook or Meta, whatever you want to call it, because obviously they're a target, as big tech is a target in general in Washington, and having something called Zuckbucks is just really bad optics. Okay, for
That's a
for
true
for them.
story right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Tyler, did you see the tweets I put out in my sort of rabbit hole thoughts that were going on that I think I was tagging you in regarding Apple hashtag strike app? Did you follow that thread? That was pretty
No,
interesting.
no.
Do you remember when Apple said that it was applying a while ago? You said that, and I could be wrong, but did you recall that Apple's applying for some sort to be a payment provider? Do you remember
Exactly.
that? And now they told F all to the Dutch
They're gonna
on that
let
whole.
they're gonna let everybody use their phones to make transactions with each other.
Yeah, but wait a second. Wait, Tyler, this is where you love this rabbit hole one. That's why I was tagging you. look at the CEO of Strike. He's been doing some really interesting things with his photos, and they're going into the archives of Apple, like old Apple photo archives, almost as if he's subliminally sending messages out right before the Bitcoin conference, which starts today, that there's an announcement coming, because they have been engaging. And the fact that the dog's agreeing, the fact that Strike app is the Lightning Network, and you now start to see that Apple is applying for this particular experience. If they connect Strike app with Apple Pay, how much does that put Apple in a really powerful position as well? And there is rumors in the speculative space that Tim Cook is going to make an announcement this week connected into the stuff that's going on with the Bitcoin conference. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen between this week and next in terms of new developments. The same way Jack Dorsey was like the messiah last Bitcoin conference.
Right.
I'm quite curious who's going to be playing that role this time, because I know Nubele from El Salvador uh, basically didn't come out to Bitcoin conference. He actually said he wasn't coming out. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what's happening this Bitcoin conference and what's going to be the next major announcement. And as Ben knows, the Lightning Network on Bitcoin Lightning Network is faster, cheaper, and swifter. And no pun intended with the Swift thing. That wasn't meant that way. But I'm just doing my own little sort of rabbit hole research in terms of, is there a possibility that Strike and Apple get into some sort of partnership
Well, no
for
doubt.
Apple Pay?
Tyler,
Of course,
Uh,
Apple's
there's
gonna
already an announcement a week ago. I pinned it on top.
right. So Apple.
Tyler,
Hold on one second, Crum. So Cheryl just pinned an article that says, "Will Strike announce a partnership with Apple at Bitcoin 2022?" Well, we'll find out in the next 24 hours, and when
Correct.
we'll talk about
Well,
it.
it's to the ninth.
Right. But what is happening, and it's largely been missed by everybody. It's a huge, incredibly substantial move that no one seems to be aware of the scope and scale of this thing. Is that Apple has said they're going to get into essentially the payments game.
Oh, that's why I said that, Tyler. Where's that guy? Where's our friend Aaron from Visa MasterCard?
Oh, right.
Where's our friend?
You're exactly right. Let's ping Aaron in here because he's an expert on this
Yeah,
shit.
because this is the brilliant part about it. Because remember,
Yeah.
we talked about Apple and what their intentions were. And the reality that I'm seeing, and that's why I agree with Ken about the Zuck Bucks as being a horrible sort of branding right now. But
Yeah.
the reality is, it seems like a lot of these tech companies are seeing that juicy e-commerce, omni-channel, meta-commerce data that's coming, because I just came from the Lisboa non-fungible conference where the CEO of Adine was talking about omni-channel and metaverse. And this is going to be epic in terms of that juicy commerce data that comes, that could be accessible by the payments people.
Right.
And if they want to maintain that, because Google has Google Pay, Apple has Apple Pay, but Google is also the search engine, right? With all their data. But Apple is interesting because they don't have a payment arm, a payment provider arm. So if Aaron's around, that would be a brilliant person to
I
get
just
his
pinged him.
thoughts on.
Yeah. I just pinged him. So
Tyler, I
hold on,
quickly
Karam.
wanted
Hold
to
on.
actually.
I'm gonna
Sure.
give it to you next. Hold on. So 12 minutes ago, forever ago, and literally 12 minutes ago, this article comes out that says Apple's new tap to pay on iPhone feature gains new partner ahead of launch. Apple announced tap to pay feature in February. The function, which is supported starting with iOS 15.4, allows businesses to use their iPhones to seamlessly and securely accept Apple Pay payments with a simple tap. So now everybody who has a goddamn iPhone can now accept payments from anyone else who has an iPhone just by tapping the fucking phones together, right? That means your babysitter and your maid and your lawnmower and your that dirty massage parlor that you go to and everywhere else, your drug dealer and everything else, right? You're gonna be paying for that with by tapping your phones. Everybody's
Did
gonna
you
be able
literally say you're a drug dealer, Tyler? That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant.
to, but that's what's gonna happen. Now,
But it's funny that you just said that, because DevCon and ETH Amsterdam are happening literally the same week as King's Day, which is going to be like the epic intersection of Ethereum developers, DevCon, NFT Amsterdam, and King's Day, which is the largest one of the largest celebrations in Amsterdam. So it's going to be very interesting how that's going to all intersect
It gets
because
better though,
every,
because
I'm sure
Apple,
it will.
not only is Apple announcing the touch functionality to pay everybody all the time, you don't need, every cafe you go to doesn't need a cash register. There's no more cash. Everyone's just tapping phones and transferring payments. And there's more, because when you tap phones, there's two, other than pay in a kind of a digital instant transfer kind of a way, there's two additional options. There's, for you, the buyer, the option to defer payments over for payments over 4 months at sort of no charge, and the ability to subscribe to whoever you're tapping the phone to. So you could subscribe to your drug dealer's weekly or monthly delivery schedule, right? Um, that's gonna be part of this as well. So the question is, how can Apple also bring this to the online dimension, so that people who aren't standing next to each other, how do they, quote unquote, tap phones with each other, right? Well, it's simple. You're on a website. It's going to give you that the wallet will also be in your laptop or on your phone, just like it, and it will ask you to authenticate a purchase, just like you authenticate purchases inside the App Store today. That's very simple. You go to the App Store, you see an app that has money, you double click on the button on the right, or you hold your thumb over your thumbprint, or you let it do a face scan, and bada boom, you've paid. Great. Why don't they add that to every website on inside of your phone? They will. That's coming, so that they can get a piece of that, like the credit cards do. And while they're at it, when you are out on the town walking around with the dogs, why don't they let you do the same form of payment, authenticating with your thumb or your face or whatever, and buy literally anything, anything, a newspaper, a cup of coffee, all of this, and you're buying it through Apple Pay. That's what's happening. It's on the horizon. So you now have Apple versus Twitter versus Facebook versus the credit card companies versus all the buy now, pay later schemes that are out there trying to get all of the websites
Tyler,
on board.
it
Yes.
sounds it sounds like a new digital race to digital payments. Sounds like a new version of the new version of the payment providers. I think it's
Yes.
like the tech digital race to the who is going to be the lead in that.
Right. But your identity, I feel, plays an interesting part. Apple even says so in their announcements around this. No doubt Facebook will too. Twitter's going to too. And to me, what's interesting is not the fiat payments, but I want to know which one's going to enable Bitcoin or other alternative forms of payment. I know Twitter's going to. Goddamn well Twitter's gonna do that when you've got Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey behind one thing. Let me clue you in case you're one of those slow kids on the like our friend Dave. Uh, Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk are sure as shit gonna be supporting alternative payment mechanisms other than
Might I
Tyler,
add something on Rakuten?
do you think that will be the end of the debit cards as well? The credit card companies. Do you think that they're gonna get rid of the plastic cards?
I'll tell you
Because
this.
it looks like that's where it's heading.
I know that they're very nervous because MasterCard and Visa are both sponsors of my events every year for the past decade, and every year they fight to see who's going to be the sponsor each year. And we have a meeting, and I've noticed in recent years they're getting more and more understandably nervous about the future, and they are proactively doing what they should do, which is use the clout that they currently have to partner with every promising startup app. They tried to buy Plaid for $5 billion or whatever it was, and they got shut down. It was too good of an acquisition. They're trying to, Visa more than MasterCard, I feel like, is making big moves to try and uh, modernize themselves in this new payment landscape that we're all thrusting ourselves into almost like overnight. This is happening. So it was
I think I think they should also move on to the online digital wallets. I think it's viable for them to get onto that. They don't need to team up with other. Well, they can do, but they can also have their online digital wallets that people can. utilize that.
Yeah. So
So
yeah,
I think that the
So
ecosystem for fintech is growing, and I'll take Rakuten Viki as an example, right? I've watched their evolution. Here, stateside, they were front facing as just a movie stream network, but then within that, they created a community, right? People can talk to each other, and within that, they then implemented ways to purchase sales for some of those shows that you like. So they were well ahead of Netflix. Now, looking at this article and sort of centering how they're creating even more expansion in their fintech, even though they started out as just a movie stream, it's interesting to see. And I think that's what your MasterCards and Visas cannot compete with because they don't have that ecosystem. So, this idea of just settling for a digital wallet is, I would say, a bit in arrears because moving forward, you're going to need a more integrated ecosystem to enjoy some of the products that these fintech companies and some of these other outlier companies are creating.
Tyler, I just wanted to actually say something. Shall I come in now?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a very different take on this, taking 9% in the Twitter thing. And you very well know, everybody here on the stage know, like Elon doesn't make a decision on the basis that, this is going to be the new thing or I'm going to make a lot of money on that. Apple going into the wearables and saying, okay, this is going to be the new world, or Mark is saying that, we're going to be launching a metaverse and this is the VR thing and new world and to capture the market and all that. So for him to sort of like take it over, like from the social commerce point of view or the payment point of view, I think doesn't make much sense. In my opinion, I think, the reason he sort of like went in was because this is one of the places where the public information is very public. I mean, you don't have the privacy policies as on the Facebook or any other social media where you can say this is for public and this is for me or my friends or like a close circle. Twitter, you go on, put something out, 160 or 320 words, letters, is to tell the world that this is what you think or this is what you want to share with the world. Now, this is open information, and that gives you the best sentiment analysis you can draw up after uh, of 500 million people. And people have successfully predicted the Brexit or the Trump coming into power and all those kind of things. Now, if you connect that up with his future vision that how somehow is going to actually bring in the machine and the humans talking to the machine, that's where he needs the building block where some sort of like a common human conscious is going to ultimately be the one who's going to be driving the AI engine. And if he is the one who's controlling it, then he would have like a better placement for himself to sort of like do that connection between the human and the machine. So I think we have to look at it from the bigger picture. I don't know whether this is what he was thinking, but I just tried to actually put two plus two together. And I think that would be at the level where he would be thinking at rather than just, okay, I'm going to make a lot of money if I go into the Twitter and it becomes a social commerce place or something like that.
It's more than social commerce. It's actual commerce because right now today, on a daily basis, I own a resort. I own a hotel. On a daily basis, I have people who are like, "Oh, can I stay here?" I was like, "Here, let me give you my little interrogation and find out how crazy you are, so I can determine if I'll let you stay here." And then afterwards, the question inevitably comes up: Okay, well, how can I pay? Right? This is for me an hourly question. How can I pay? And currently, by far the most common options are pay, and this is a wildly diverse demographic of people, geographically. And by far, the two most common options are. Does anyone want to guess what the two most common options are?
PayPal.
PayPal's number one. Yes. What's number
Stripe.
two? No.
Crypto?
Crypto. I would put it at. It's gaining. It's definitely gaining, but it's still not in the top two. You could say three, I guess, or four.
Ruble.
No.
Rubles.
Union Pay, Tyler?
Depending on what part of the world the people are from, that's just a credit card. So they would say, "Do you
Right.
accept?"
Okay. I thought
WeChat,
we were going to get to specific credit cards.
you
Okay.
can
Are,
pay if you
are you
say you have
taking
to.
WeChat?
WeChat Pay,
WeChat
if they're
yeah,
from China, then definitely
and Alipay.
they'll be confused if you don't accept WeChat Pay or Alipay. And then if you're in Thailand, they'll be confused if you don't accept Prompt Pay, which is or our local bank system. But internationally speaking, more people are getting hip to TransferWise, and the my point is, look at the problem we have here. Where, and by the way, it's a very very common issue where it's like I had it today. I had it at least once today. I know of one where the person didn't have PayPal, doesn't use TransferWise, doesn't use crypto, doesn't use Alipay or whatever, and so she decided, oh well, I'm just going to book. I'm standing here next to you, but I'm going to book it on Airbnb, even though they're going to charge me 15% for the booking. I'm still happy to pay it because I want to make sure that I book it before somebody else does. 15 fucking percent. That's to highlight how big of an opportunity there is to have a ubiquitous, simple, immediate payment system for people in the age, which we should all have. There should be a rather globally ubiquitous system, which that is the promise of everyone having a different, you know, crypto wallet, of course, and these neobanks, if everyone can get on board with one of them or any. China has done this. Everyone is on WhatsApp Pay, WeChat Pay, and Alipay. But internationally, there isn't yet this big international payment. And my point is Twitter is in a position to gain substantially as this system because they are very intelligent about how they're going about this. And you can see in my Twitter profile, which is in my Clubhouse bio, you will see my Twitter account. If you go to my Twitter account, you can send me money. The best part about it is you can send me money in 5 or 6 or 7 different ways. You can send it to me as crypto or PayPal or. That's kind of the genius of what I'm proposing is people will very quickly just say, oh, do you have Twitter? And that will be synonymous with, well, if you do, then I'll be able to send you money. So there's a unique opportunity for Twitter to benefit by this opportunity I'm talking about, where people are still willing to pay for Airbnb fees, even though they're standing next to each other. So,
So, Tyler,
What
I don't know what percent of your business comes from OTAs. I'd be curious. But if somebody books to an OTA, I think you use Booking.com. I think you do, and they want to pay for what they're going through Booking.com. Why wouldn't they use a traditional credit card or an Amex card? I don't know if you take it. Well, Booking.com takes Amex.
yeah,
Okay, why wouldn't they do that so they can get points? Because I mean, a lot of people just use their credit card just to build up points. So I mean, if it went through Expedia or Booking.com, aren't those people more likely just to use a traditional credit card, even if
right,
Twitter has a payment system? Yeah.
right. But if you, in the case of anyone who does use OTAs, they inevitably are going to have a lower rate for booking directly because every property has to pay commissions on every OTA platform. Booking charges 20% to every host, for lack of a better word, or property. So if you, as a property on Booking.com, you're paying Booking.com 20% of that booking.
Well, I know that, but a lot of hotels. Maybe you're fortunate that you don't have that. But I'll tell you, in the United States, a lot of the American hotels have what's called parity arrangements with the OTAs, where they cannot undercut the OTA pricing unless, for example, you're a member of the program. Like, for example, if you're in the Marriott program and you book it through because you have a Marriott number, then you can get a lower rate than the OTA. But Marriott is not allowed to offer to the general public rates that are below the OTAs. to the general public. So they get around it if you're a Marriott member or whatever. But I mean, so I'm just, I mean, that's a technicality of the stuff. But
Every property wants to incentivize people to book with them directly to avoid the commissions of whoever is sending them, whether it's a travel agent or a website like a note, like a booking or an Airbnb or
so,
whatever.
so Tara, I have a solution for you. I'll tell you right now. I mean, what a lot of, I mean, particularly we do it a lot in Vegas. Everyone wants to know why there's resort fees because the OTAs don't get paid on the resort fees. And if
Right.
the hotels thought they can get away with it, they would make the rooms free and just charge a resort fee. So
Right.
why don't you just charge a big resort fee and make your rates really low, and then you don't have to worry about you'll be paying 20% of a much smaller amount.
Yeah. That you can do that. I'd be curious to see how they respond if you did that.
Tyler, out of interest, and I think the answer is very simple. Why don't you take Bitcoin for your bookings? Is it simply not
I
enough
do.
people are willing to give you Bitcoin just yet?
Oh no, I absolutely do. In fact, it's probably my favorite way for payment.
Okay, cool. But it's just that you find that I presume the majority of people don't want to give you Bitcoin for it at the moment, right?
Correct.
Yeah, sure. That's standard and expected.
Yeah. Okay. So iOS 15.5 beta is coming out right now. It's 15.4 is the one that's coming out that is going to enable all of this payment shenanigans. And 15.5 will be the one after that. The beta is just gotten into the hands of the developers, and the iOS 15.5 beta shows that Apple is giving into third-party payments. It is set to make it easier for you to pay, manage, and subscribe to things outside of the App Store, is the headline. That, by the way, just came out 5 hours ago. iOS 15.5 beta is adding a new big feature to iPhones, the ability to make payments outside of the App Store. It's a change that's going to significantly impact how you access content on your phone. Found the in development version of the next iPhone software update contains permissions for apps to link users to external purchase systems. This option currently only works for reader apps, which are those that offer access to previous purchases or subscriptions for magazines, newspaper, books, audios, music, or video. While these apps should be much easier for users to manage and pay for content, you get the idea and the implications of all of this, which is Apple becoming a payment enabler in a huge way outside of their own app store. Which it's funny. I remember Jason and I think misunderstanding. We thought Apple was going to do this in 2009. There was a headline that was like, "Oh shit, Apple's going to get into payments outside of their own ecosystem, and they're going to be right in the middle of every transaction. Oh, it's genius! Oh my god, Apple's going to..." And it's like, they could have done this a while ago if they really wanted to. It's like everyone's doing it simultaneously. This happens a lot in tech, by the way, where everyone gets all hot to trot simultaneously on the same issues. And this being the payment enabler is the hotness of the moment. And I reiterate yet again that I think that's precisely. And Elon Musk was perhaps with PayPal certainly intended to be the big digital payment enabler and even non-digital payment enabler. And indeed, they are one of, as I just said in my example, they actually, in my case, are the most common payment enabler. But Twitter's likely to, and others, and Facebook's going to make a run for it. Apple, as we can see, are clearly, they all simultaneously are about to launch massive initiatives to make themselves, to eat PayPal's lunch and much more, and go way beyond them, and even the credit cards. So here it comes. Next big story. We've only done the first big story, by the way. The second story of today is that Google plans to hide and block Play Store apps that are outdated. Google's preparing to limit the availability of outdated apps on the Play Store, the company announced. From November 1st, all existing apps in the store should aim to target an API level within 2 years of its latest major Android OS release. If they don't, Google says it will place limits on which users are able to discover or install them. So out-of-date apps are going to get lower visibility, essentially. So The next one is that OpenSea adds Solana NFT trading support in beta. A marketplace search shows that 865,000 NFTs have been minted on Solana. So Solana support is finally going live on OpenSea in beta mode. Solana NFTs have been added to OpenSea, the largest overall NFT marketplace. OpenSea and Solana. There you go. That seems like a win-win. The next is that Coinbase adds support for India's UPI, Universal Payment, whatever, Payments of India. What is Vinay or Monica with us to tell us what UPI stands for? It's something about Universal Payment India or something like that. Coinbase has added support for the popular UPI payment instrument in India, making its cryptocurrency exchange functional for the first time in India. So now Coinbase is operational in India. That's, again, a huge win. Smart.
Just in case for the 30% tax contribution.
Yes, Justin. Oh, a great point, Cheryl. India, boy, in the last 48 hours just announced that there's going to be a 30% tax on all things crypto, right? There it is. Great point. They got that out the door just in time. The next is from the Washington Post that Meta, formerly known as Facebook, disrupts several covert influence operations in Ukraine by Belarus and Russia-linked actors, including attempts to hack Ukrainian military personnel. Facebook said Thursday, that's today, that it disrupted several covert influence operations targeting Ukrainians as the company, Facebook, has intensified its fight against these covert influence operations that are happening in Ukraine by Russia-linked actors in Russia and in Belarus. And let me just spell that out for you, that a lot of Russia's leading cybersecurity folks who work at plausible deniability arm's length are a lot of Russians working in Belarus. Because you'll remember back last summer, Joe Biden, Uncle Joe, met with Big Daddy Vladdy in Geneva and told him, you got to knock it off with all this cyber attack nonsense. And Vlad said, who? What hackers? We have no hackers in Russia. And they all fled to Belarus, where, by the way, my Russian hackers who built my startup were based in Minsk, Belarus. So I know a thing or two about elite Russian hackers hiding out in Minsk. So, yeah, that's Facebook is confirming that themselves in this headline, that there's a whole bunch of attacks on Ukrainian military personnel by Russian-linked actors in Belarus and in Russia. But make no mistake, they're Russians in Belarus because they want to appear to not be Russians. Wow, what a brilliant scheme you have there. What a wonderfully obfuscated disguise you have. So anyway, the next one is that Samsung expects Q1 operating profit to rise 50% year over year. Its highest since 2018, and ad revenue up 18%, and who cares? Next one is blockchain audit service called Certicay, raises $88 million, led by Tiger Global. The next is from the Washington Post. It says how Gwyneth Paltrow and Mila Kunis and others are pushing women to invest in NFTs, which critics see as a form of self-serving feminism centered on white women. And the story says Gwyneth Paltrow and Mila Kunis joined a Zoom in January to encourage 5,000 women in the audience to break into the male-dominated world of crypto. And this topic comes up quite often. How a lot of the people who are benefiting by the price of cryptos and bitcoins and all this jazz, it's disproportionately men. And so where are the ladies? Okay, and then where are the other minorities? It is disproportionately a bunch of white dudes. Although, I don't know, there's a whole lot of people all over the planet who are getting into crypto in very big ways. But from a U.S. perspective, it's a whole bunch of white dudes. Anyway, so the Washington Post articles about we watched. Here it is. Gwyneth and Mila did this event with 5,000 women saying, "We have watched a lot of these bros get together and earn a lot of money," said Paltrow. We deserve to be in this space just as much. Yeah, well, no one's prohibiting you from getting in the space. In fact, you're probably very much welcomed into the crypto space.
I would say that that women, white and otherwise, are cleaning up in the NFT space, which I would consider a subset of the or an adjunct of the crypto space. And there are a great many women in the space doing very successful projects because, unlike just cryptocurrency tools and technology, the NFT space and the actual application projects require being able to create community. And Web3 creates community, women create immunity, and my
Mm,
PTR is called Women with Vases.
that's a great point. It's a really, really, really great point. That the to to be stereotypical for a minute, it is uh, sort of a stereotypical, although I think people won't disagree.
Poor Tyler, you're trying so hard
No,
not to
no,
back
hear me
yourself
out.
into a corner.
Hear me out. Hear me out. My point is that women do. Uh, every marketer knows the power of market. The women market because of the power of word of mouth amongst women, and it might take time to get NFTs to get to the point where it really becomes ubiquitous, like yoga pants. But it'll get there, and when it does, you're right. Women, you might see disproportionately more women than men when we really get to the final end stages of this technology becoming like water or paper and truly ubiquitous. It might be actually a lot more, but in the short term, in the onboarding process, yeah, maybe not. But there could be a real tipping point happening, and I like the way that you mention it. It's a lot of when you get into community, and NFT is a lot about community. Sure enough.
And
Uh,
I want to plug my room today at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Karma Club is going to have a room called Creating Community Through Web3. And it's really WAGMI. We all make it together. And I hope you'll all come.
yeah,
I just pin
and
it on top of the room.
I think you just raised an interesting question in my mind about how will the metaverse, at what point will the metaverse, just the whole concept of gender in the metaverse is truly fascinating. Like, will potentially, will women feel more because of the disembodiment of it? Will that make it more male, or will women be very at ease there and really thrive there? Or, and by the way, everyone's free to be whatever they want to be in the metaverse. And that's one of the most interesting things about it, I think. So, how will what will that really look like? Anyway, so
Tyler, a lot of this is driven by what's the name of that big agency that represents all the celebrities out west? I can't remember it.
There's a
you,
couple of them. There's
there's a few
UTA, William
UPA,
Morris.
yeah,
Yeah, it's one of those, like, they're the ones that got Snoop Dogg into it and all these celebrities and Madonna. Like, Madonna knows nothing about the metaverse, but these are the guys that are
Creative
behind it.
artist agency. Sorry, just jumping.
Right. These are the guys that are behind it and they're like pushing it. And, so oftentimes celebrities don't really know much about it other than, hey, we think you should do this. Okay. They sign whatever. And so the women that have been brought into it, like Madonna and the couple that you just mentioned, they don't really they didn't know much about it when it was first approached to them. So I think that as they push more women into it, other women will look up to their female role models and get into it as well. But this isn't like these celebrities are doing the research and finding out about it and getting into it. They're kind of being, you know, managed into it.
It says in the article, to your point, it says NFTs have a special appeal for celebrities because they represent a new kind of source material for storytelling, just like graphic novels or books, said Adam Friedman, an executive at CAA, Creative Artist Agencies, one of the big agencies you just referred to, the Hollywood talent agency that represents Paltrow and Kunis and Kuchar and Zuckerberg and Witherspoon. CAA, through Connect Ventures, its investment partnership with NEA, which is one of the big VC Silicon Valley firms, has its own NFT investments, including funding OpenSea, the largest NFT marketplace in the world, valued at more than $13 billion. Friedman said early in the crypto boom, opportunities for celebrities were mostly cash grabs, so CAA advised clients to wait. The female celebrities now championing women-led projects are doing so out of a genuine interest in empowering women, he said. Although, call me skeptical, I think your point's valid that it's an interesting coincidence that Hollywood agencies who manage the big Hollywood celebrities are now investing in tech, and their own roster of clients are promoting their own investments.
I'm thinking we shouldn't have introduced them to CryptoKitties.
So there's room for skepticism in that.
Intellectual property, Tyler.
Yeah.
Intellectual property.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Something.
they're all pumping up the price, and they're going to sell it, to all these people who don't know what's really going on. It's yeah. I found a. I can send this to you on via DM, but I found this like 30-minute documentary on this. It's like one big scam, but I'll send it to you on Twitter.
So here's a fun thing. You ever hear see like the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and they say, "Hey, look, here's the Hollywood celebrity that lives in a famous house." Well, what's interesting about living in something is it's a little bit of a speculative thing. Like if you are a real estate developer and you just need to pump the asset by 30% or 80% or so, or hey, just if you want to really ambitious, go like 5 or 6 times the original thing. Buy up a house, make it as fancy as possible, and say, "Hey, celebrity manager X, how about you have your celebrity spend 1 month in this house?" And we'll take a lot of photos. We'll have a couple parties. Everyone will be like, wow, this person's really rich and famous. Look at all this stuff. And we'll cut you in for 10% of the transaction for the sales volume boost because a bunch of people want to live near a Hollywood celebrity or in a Hollywood celebrity house. This stuff has been going on for a long time. And it's a way that you can just put a brand on something and automatically boost the value astronomically. And yeah, so it's a business model, and when you see it cycled out for the new digital infrastructure, it's just a continuation of a very old pattern.
Yeah, it's that. I think it's contagion bias, which is the idea that because something has touched something, it's somehow contaminated with it. It works for bad, my finger smells of poo, and it works for good. This house was lived in by whoever, famous star X. It's interesting.
Will
We're
Smith
still,
shit in this toilet.
yeah, exactly. It's interesting our behaviors are still so driven by something that's a contagion bias. And I think once you realize something is a contagion bias, and it might be at the root of provenance and all this other stuff I don't really understand, then maybe you can stand outside of it and say, do I really want to be worried about the fact that X touched Y when actually, X isn't that bad in the first place, or that, whatever, this is Will Smith's used underwear or whatever. It's, yeah, interesting.
Okay, next up, Washington Post headline reads that Epic Games and Lego, the Danish little plastic brick company, form a long-term partnership to quote-unquote shape the future of the metaverse by building a safe place for children to play, but offer few details. But
Ooh, sounds like a Roblox competitor.
yes, it does.
Safe
You
place.
Lego got in before anyone else with like Lego Worlds MMO, and then they went, screw it, let's just do like a strip light version of World of Warcraft rather than like actual construction. For people that have longer memories, Lego had with Mindwave software way back in the day. They had or Dreamscape. It was like they were some of the earliest pioneers for 3D games way back in the day. And you see like some versions of that with like the Lego Star Wars and things like that for video game stuff. But Lego's been at this for a very long time. And so it's interesting to see them jumping in with the most recent one, but partnering with Epic is a much more I will say tasteful version of doing it. A lot of other brands are just going with whoever approaches them first. Lego's got a little more patience than a lot of other groups.
Hey, Tyler, is anybody going to go to Legoland in San Diego anymore? If they can go to Legoland in the metaverse and not have to deal with traffic on the
Oh
I-5?
yeah, the theme park exposure. That's brilliant.
Or you could make some, like, I think one of the most appealing things about Lego is that one, it's educational, but two, if you do have a metaverse component, what you make in the metaverse, hey, we can print it off and ship it to your home so you can have it at home, which is, I think, also appealing because then you can hold it in your hand. So.
Lego was really nervous when 3D printers started to become popular. They're like, we need to be very, very cautious about how we approach intellectual property and what the digital files and stuff. But I mean, they're one of the few groups in the world that has like a dedicated play lab with like they bring in the anthropologists for like 60 different cultures around the world, different markets, and just watch kids play in different cultures and customize their products around it. Despite that they can't quite figure out girls, but that's a whole separate thing. But it's a fascinating company if you ever get a chance to learn about them. They've got one of the few lights out factories in the world, like a multi-billion-dollar polymer plant. It's crazy, crazy stuff. High degrees of automation.
I had the one of the co-founders of Pinterest, who's also the chief creative officer of Pinterest, speak at my event a couple years ago, and his entire presentation was about his childhood and lifelong passion for Lego and how that played a significant role in the development of Pinterest. It was one of the best presentations I've ever seen. It was really incredibly cool. Um, the next one is from the Wall Street Journal that a one-click checkout service called Bolt acquires a crypto payments startup called Wire. Sources say for around $1.5 billion. The deal extends crypto's hot M&A market. Bolt, the payments-focused financial technology company, is acquiring crypto service startup Wire. And there you have yet again another team kind of getting together to make the most of the race to about the future of payments for products and services. Bolt acquiring a crypto payment company. So you're going to have it all there. I think that's key, and I think that's again why Twitter's going to be in a unique space as soon as they get this whole thing rolled out. And they're enabling payment on all kinds of websites. That's the big race that's underway. So Google, and oh, by the way, I don't see a story for it, but it really should be one. It's called Fast. It was a startup that raised, what was it, $100 million, so just imploded over the weekend or
The
in recent.
troubled startup. I love these postmortems where they're like, oh yes, if only we could have seen it from the beginning over the last 10 years or something like that.
Well, that somebody did a deep dive on the founder and dug up some pretty heavy dirt that the investors were going to be embarrassed by, and they should have found in their due diligence, where he started off by reportedly he which website did he register? And then Qantas, was it the airlines? He registered quant.us, which looks like their name. He got the .us ending when that became available, and then created a fake website that looked like their competitor and threatened to sell it to their competitor. And so he sold it to them for 1.5 million or thereabouts. And then he did another project that was even more shady. And then, anyway, he was really there's such a huge demand for the product that he was building called Fast for like one-click checkouts, where it travels with you to every website you go to. And I have a
It's like
friend who,
PayPal but modern.
right, for websites, yes, very much instant, one-click checkout on every website you go to. And
Bezos would be a little unhappy with his one
yeah,
checkout patent with things. They get into a little turf war there.
for sure. But he'd raised a shit ton of money for this, and it all just imploded recently. So anyway,
Yep. I just pinned a Business Insider article that was out 4 days ago on this fast implosion.
yeah, there's a
Pin on
photo.
top of the room. Yeah.
So anyway, the next one is, where did it go? Google announces something called multi-search for Lens, letting users ask questions about photos and screenshots. Available in beta in the US on iOS and Android. You can ask
Please
questions.
let us keep the camera online all the time. Please feed all your data to Google. Please, please, please feed the beast.
Yeah. So train the algorithm. One of the most interesting announcements at Google's search-focused keynote in September was a big upgrade to Lens that lets you take a photo and ask questions about that photo. Multi-search in Google Lens is now available to beta test on Android and iOS. Multi-search in Google's entirely new way to search that aims to address how you sometimes don't have all the words to describe what you're looking for. It starts by taking a picture or importing an existing one with Google Lens and then swiping up on the results panel and tapping the new Add to Your Search button at the top. This will let you enter a question about an object in front of you or refine your search by color, brand, or visual attribute. Examples include, here we go, drum roll please. Screenshot a stylish orange dress and add the query green to find it in another color. Snap a photo of your dining set and add the query coffee table to find a matching table to your dining set. Take a picture
Can't
of
all be
your
Wayfair.
take a picture of your rosemary plant and add the query care instructions. So you have the combination of the photo and text along with it is the idea here. You have multimedia queries,
And your
photo.
psychographic when you clicked from your search history as well. So it's got not just those. You've also got the microphones from the area. Like this stuff starts to stack real quick with the number of sensors you can add to this.
So it says fashion and home decor use cases are prominently highlighted today, and Google noting that currently the best results are for shopping searches, so that you can take a photo of anybody walking around live or any photo of any person in any photo and try and find the shoes that they are wearing or the handbag that they have or the hat that they're wearing or the backpack or the bicycle or whatever. Why is that interesting? Because if you're a longtime tech newser, you know how huge that's going to be in the very near future of AR and VR when you're walking around town with the next future version of Google goggles when your phone is strapped to your fucking face and everything you look at is also being looked at by Google Lens in real time. And you can say, oh, that's a nice bike. What about in blue? And it will refer you to all the places you can buy that bike in blue. Or what a nice backpack. Is it available in my size? How fast can I have it delivered to my house? Yada, yada, yada. So there's just such a, this is the way Google is going to disrupt Amazon, by the way, and anyone else who builds these apps. But Google is clearly building the tools now so you can train your phone and their algorithms. More importantly, they need to train their algorithms right now so they can be the front runner in doing this. And they know that. And it's such a $1 trillion opportunity that they're now rolling it out in beta today. So you can use Lens on your Android or iOS phone today in beta and show it objects and do searches so that they can
And
start.
Tyler, I was actually looking something up yesterday and saw that new button on my Google. It was weird. I didn't know that it was new, but and it did. It looked up the screenshot that I was trying to get to, and as you said, yeah, it is going to compete with Amazon's way of getting your designer clothes. If you just put the little picture in the Amazon, and you can find it somewhere for $2 from Alibaba.
Yeah.
And
So
all they
I
needed to make this miracle possible was an army of 10,000 Bangladesh click farm workers working for 6 months in a row, clicking on the most inane, boring furniture sets you could possibly imagine. But you too can be one of the few 100,000 people that uses it and refines it one more layer on the neural net. You too can provide the training data set, and we can all become contributors to the great training data set that is Google. It's AI. It makes things magical. It's fully automated.
Yes. So it's live on my phone right now. So I opened the main normal Google app on my iPhone, and it starts with a search bar at the top. It's got the Google logo, and under the Google logo is a search bar. At the right of the search bar is a microphone and a camera icon. And inside the search bar, inside the field, it says encrypted for your safety. Oh, wow, that's a nice new update. Thank you, Google. And if I click on the camera, it now opens my camera. nearly full screen, except for some of my images that I've taken recently in my image recent images, so that I can either use my camera, and it says the words search with your camera. Oh shit, that's a whole new paradigm of searching, because we used to search with text, and now Google's trying to get you to start searching with your camera, doing Google searches with your camera. That is the future. Why? Because in the not so distant future, we're going to be shifting to away from using text input into devices like our laptops and our phones into visual input into our VR and AR glasses. And this is the middle, this is the in between, where they need to start training the algorithms that are going to empower that experience now, and they need to do it while before we get there, and you're going to help train it to do that. So I click on this search with your phone and I point it at my Apple mouse, and then it detects the object, and it says,
Competitor detected.
and it and it says Magic Mouse 2, and it searches for the mouse, and there's a link, and I click on Magic Mouse 2, and now I can buy Magic Mice right there. Bada boom. What a crazy e-commerce experience. That is not happening on Amazon, very notably. That's the whole point. Google now just figured out a way to keep me from going to Amazon to buy anything by visually searching for shit.
Oh, so the recommendation is actually the direct shops that sell that magic mice and not
Oh,
selling over Amazon?
even
Tyler,
better. Hold on. Hold the phone, Tyrone, because on this search result page that they've made for me, at the very top, it shows the photo that I took of my mouse by simply tapping on my mouse in the lens. It then says add to your search. And it's a text input field where I can say, what could I add? Color, brand name, or more. And I could say, gosh, what would be a good addition to my mouse search?
Ergonomics.
Hmm. Color, I guess white, red,
Red, red.
red, exactly. Let's see if it have Apple Mouse in red. It does come up with other mice in red, and it did find an Apple mouse in red color skin for your Apple Magic Mouse. There, it did it. Holy shit. Color red Apple Magic Mouse skin. They have red
What
skin.
will the wonders of capitalism bring us next?
There we go. So there's the future, folks, and that's a baby step towards our AR VR inevitable future that Google is already foaming at the mouth to optimize.
Is no one else bothered by the fact that the primary interaction that people are going to have is looking at another person and going, "What ads can I sell to them?" and "What can I buy that they're currently around?" It's like
yes.
it's like you look at a person and you just see a dollar sign floating above their head. I think this might cheapen some of the human interactions in the future.
Hold on a sec. I'm doing another search. This fucker's already got me trained to search other stuff. Well done, Google product team. I'm searching the pre-workout powder here on my desk. Sure enough, there. God damn it! You can search. You can find anything now. This is a really, I have to say, impressively good experience to find stuff in an e-commerce way instead of typing it into Google and then having it. You just aim your camera at it, it detects the object, and it shows you how to buy it. It's very impressive, and you can tailor your search. That's kind of the new headline today: is you search with Lens. It does object recognition. It knows what you're searching for, but you can amend your search with additional text with the image, and it can be a pre-shot photo or live in your phone. Very cool. Okay, next story I guess we should do is Berlin-based consumer electronic retail rental service called Grover raises $110 million. I like this. This is potentially huge. It's a Berlin-based consumer electronics rental service. So if you need a a couple, you have your friends coming over for the weekend, and you need a few more controllers for your PlayStation 5, You don't need to buy two more PlayStation 5 controllers. You can rent them for the weekend. You want to try out the new drone? Instead of buying the drone, you probably should rent that thing for a day or two before you go buy it. So now you can rent pretty much anything locally and have it delivered nearly instantly. Why wouldn't that be huge?
You'll own nothing and be happy.
Right.
Well, because there's certain stores that have these really generous return policies. So a lot of people, when they only need something for a weekend, they purchase it and then they return it on Monday or Tuesday.
I wouldn't
And
know
then they
anything.
get permanently blacklisted from every retail purchase for everything into their future, and their social credit score goes down. And you never quite know which one does it.
And next thing you know,
Even if
you
it's
can't limit the price.
used, you can return it.
Well, Cheryl, let me explain.
It depends on the item. It depends on
Hold
the
on.
store.
Ken, Ken,
But
Ken,
yes.
she's in Japan where no, you can't return anything. Let me explain.
Okay.
No, you
America,
can return if it's not it's still in the package and not
if
open
it's not
and not
open,
used.
exactly. Well, Cheryl, in America, you can open it and still return it. In fact, you can use the shit out of it and still return it in America. And Americans, when they
What?
yes, I know. As a somebody in Japan, you're confused. I get that. Here's how it works. America had you can blame Nordstrom's for this, believe it or not, and Macy's and Robinsons, who will take back anything, even shit they don't even sell you. So the American big retailers created a shopping environment where anyone can buy something and in many cases beat the shit out of it, bring it back without a receipt, sometimes up to a year later, and still get their full money back. Home Depot even gets into this, where people return their Christmas trees the day after Christmas and get a full refund. And people are dragging their dead Christmas trees from their top of their car into the front of the store and saying, "This tree's broken. I want my money back." And that's American capitalism at work for you. The rest of the world didn't fall for that crazy game. And actually,
Sir,
see,
that's not how trees work. How dare you tell me how trees work? Are you saying I'm wrong? This is America.
Very
so
much like
Hey
McDonald's hot coffee
Tyler,
scandal and the Winnebago that goes on the highways as and the guy gets a full handout as a thing for we should reform liability. And tort reform. There's a lot of press around this that doesn't reflect statistics because there is a very large financial gain to be made when you could change what consumer rights are. So I just would caution people to go do some more lookups on, especially some of the, especially when you start looking at antitrust around consumer rights stuff coming out. There's some bad news about this things, and it's not entirely straightforward.
So I have to
Tyler,
beg my American friends who might be listening to this. When you do leave America and go to Europe or Asia or really anywhere, the rest of the world doesn't play this game. So you're going to be in Tokyo, you're going to buy something. The second you open that thing, you own it, and there is no returning it. And I mean, no returning it. And if you try to return it, they're going to look at you like you're a fucking idiot, and you are because
And
you grew up.
Tyler, don't. I mean, isn't there Costco in Thailand? Because here,
No,
after Costco, enters Taiwan, actually the business model you just mentioned, you can return anything, is
yeah,
so popular here. Actually,
yes.
yeah, like make
Your
fortune out of this
American companies
unpaid.
are
Yeah.
bringing American customer service culture to the rest of the world. Yes.
And
It,
yeah, and other like powerful follow this rule as well. You can return anything after you open it, but if you return
We're
too
also,
much
by the way,
too many
baby, we're
times,
also bringing free fucking ketchup to the rest of the world too. By the way, one McDonald's at
yeah,
a
yeah.
time.
But
in
you
Europe,
can
they have
be on the blacklist. Yeah, if you return.
Unlimited free ketchup and free refills. Everybody, you're going to feel the power of America's free refills.
it's a
Before,
dietary miracle. In Europe, they have stronger source and place, especially around food items and such, but also for just a lot of products where they say this is a thing. It came from this region. It's more or less the same thing it was last year, and the decade it was before, and 100 years since. They've been making it the same way all the time, and that's a cultural thing. When you ship something, it is what it says on the box. In America, we have a different culture of that's marketing placement. Whatever you can put on the box that gets someone to buy it, regardless of whether or not it actually reflects what's inside. it's a much more Wild West type kind of environment. So the idea of people being able to return something is supposed to act as kind of like a counter to that, because there's a bit of mutual deception occurring on both sides with the consumer and from the merchant. There are other ways to solving it, but that's historically been one of the issues. And you see some of that translating to online commerce, where did you really buy it from the store? Oh wait, it was actually a third party ship from China that has no relationship with the original brand. That sort of thing stacks up quite a bit with some of the historical culture here.
So,
How do
I
they deal with the return goods?
hold on. We got breaking news here. Just coming in right now. Thank you to Armish for the DM on this one. The United Nations General Assembly is now voting on suspending Russia from the Human Rights Council. That's happening right
Is Saudi
now.
one of the people the voting, one of the groups voting on this?
They would be. They're on
Wow.
the Human Rights Council, right? And apparently, China has now voted against this resolution to kick out Russia from the Human Rights Council. So China now is going to have a very hard time pretending that they're not in bed with Russia on all of this. And
They're
the
a good
his,
friend you can count on, do the bare minimum when required.
Okay, so what is
Ti-
the
ti-
implication for Russia if they are kicked out of the Human Rights Council?
then when there was a previous vote to make Russia, like, make a strong thing about Russia needs to get out. Well, there's going to be votes that happen by the Human Rights Council. Did Russia commit crimes against humanity and war crimes and everything? That's going to be voted on by the Human Rights Council. Well, Russia's on that council, so they're not going to vote against themselves, nor China. So that's part of the reason why they want to kick Russia out, so they don't have a vote, the ability to kind of vote in their own favor.
yeah,
I
but
don't think
Tyler, the
China
main reason,
will want to vote for I mean for this, because if anybody do that against China, I mean they'll be screwed too, right? For the Xinjiang situation.
well, that's why China's voting against it.
Yeah,
They're
right.
voting against it about they don't want people like looking at their human rights issues. Not so much because of what's going
Exactly.
on in the Ukraine.
Current voting members include Argentina, Benin, Cameroon, Eritrea, Finland, Gambia, Honduras, India, Kazakhstan, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Montenegro, Paraguay, Qatar, Somalia, UAE, United States of America. The Human Rights Council elections for.
Illustrious company.
Hold on a second. Other countries. Where the hell's Russia and China on there? Oh, those are the ones they're electing. Oh, sorry. 19 of the 47 council members in this one. There's a whole bunch. There's 47.
Yeah, I don't think this is that important of a story actually, but
Well, no, it is though, because China is trying to play like they are on Ukraine's side through PR when we know goddamn well that they're not. They're
yeah, but
next.
the only thing that matters in the UN is the Security Council, and no one's throwing. I mean, I think there's been some discussion even about the United States trying to get Russia off the Security Council. That's not going to happen. There's a reason. I mean, they're there. I mean, but I mean, the Security Council controls everything. It's not the General Assembly or some subcommittee of a General Assembly.
So
UN's a paper tiger.
when, by the way, Zelensky just said that to their face, saying that you guys need to rethink the way you all do shit because you are seemingly can't do anything, which he's exactly correct, by the way. Um, it's a
So
real.
Tyler, you do know there's a big story on Twitter that's been bigger than some of these other things that we've been talking about, right?
What's that?
That they're going to apparently have an edit feature now, so you can edit your tweets as opposed to having to delete them. That I tweeted that out a while ago to you, and it's a very big story in the Wall Street Journal for sure. I mean, they're
We
giving it a lot of press.
we mentioned
Human
it.
Genocide Council that was supposed to result in world peace, and we're going from that to a UX button that we've had on other interfaces for 20 years. I just good frick.
covered it. We covered that briefly yesterday when
Oh,
Twitter
okay.
conceded that they're going to roll that out as part of their Twitter Blue subscription service.
Oh, because the story that I saw didn't say it was going to be part of a subscription service. So, you know.
We'll find out. I
Does
imagine.
anyone else find it ridiculous that we're paying literally for a button that every user interface has literally featured since copy and paste, and it's a subscription feature? I mean, what other things can we? It's like you have to put the X button on the keyboard and the E button. You have to buy the letters of the alphabet one by one. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous.
How else are you going to out innovate the famous Steve Jobs, who said, now we're introducing copy and paste? Actually, you have to pay for edit. Wow.
No, Chris, you have to subscribe to each letter on the alphabet on the keyboard one at a time, not just a one-off payment.
Oh, that's even
on a
worse.
monthly basis.
I'd go into debt over it.
By the way, there is going to be a point. I'm surprised we haven't reached it yet, but there's going to be a point that you're not going to have all these subscription services because people at some point either, I mean, even if they don't add it up, it's going to implicitly they're going to figure out, wait a second, I'm spending $500 a month on subscription services. I mean, because everything wants to be a subscription service, and
Yeah.
it's just not plausible because you could say it's only $6 here, $13 here, but you do 50 of them, okay, it adds up.
But they don't have a choice. 68% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and this is the wealthiest country on the earth. I mean, like it's we're getting to a point where it's like if you nickel and dime people, they don't have enough for food. Eventually, you get to a point where that
So
becomes a
you're
real
making my
problem.
point, Chris. You're not
Ah, no.
running against it.
What we need to offer is a subscription food service to prevent that people from going hungry.
The thing is, I've been through this with our business, which is growing nicely, runs kind of without me now, but it's educational. It's teaching people to make games, and we keep releasing courses, and people keep buying them one off, and we keep trying with subscription, but for no good reason apart from people tell us we should do that. Business people tell us we should do that. But if I look at it in terms of what we have to do as a business to keep people subscribed, it's almost exactly the same activity as what we need to do to keep people buying new courses, which is we need to keep making good shit. And if we continuously make a stream of good stuff, people who are subscribed would presumably stay subscribed, and if they're not subscribed, they'll buy new stuff. So I think I kind of just supporting Ken's argument that there's almost so by corollary, there's almost an opposite driver. If a bunch of people are subscribed, it's more possible to get lazy and not continue to deliver a value stream, which at some point the consumers will catch up with, or you'll get outcompeted. Is how I look at it. It doesn't really change the core business activity, which is continue to add value, a value stream. It's just much more convenient to have people subscribe. We all know the pros, but I think the actual activity you have to do is similar in both cases. Maybe.
Berkshire Hathaway discloses that it purchased about $4.2 billion of Hewlett Packard, about 11.4%. And the stock has gone up 11%, as things normally do when Berkshire Hathaway announces they've made a significant purchase.
Somebody wants a board seat.
And the next is that Nord Security, a Lithuania-based startup behind NordVPN, raises $100 million in its first ever funding at a $1.6 billion valuation. So Lithuania has a unicorn. Well done, Lithuania.
How much you want to bet they cut a deal with Five Eyes to boost that valuation?
Wall Street Journal says they have sources that the SEC is investigating how Amazon discloses its use of third-party seller data for its business. The source says that the probe has been underway for over a year. Yeah, we've read several articles about this, how Amazon can play fast and loose with third-party seller data.
I'm expecting this is going to lead to some record fines, the likes of which you've never seen before, for the amount to like 0.001% of monthly sales.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, they got a bigger issue than the SEC. I think there's I mean, I don't have the exact story in front of me. I mean, I remember reading it, we discussed it, but there is some issue as to whether Amazon executives, not Bezos because he refused to show up, gave perjured testimony before Congress on this issue. So
Yeah,
it's a
a few
lot
ones
more
willing to go to
serious.
jail. Look at some nice lobbying jobs afterwards with things. Keep people revolving door paid. It's just keep the cycle going.
The next one is that the CEO of one of China's biggest tech companies, JD.com, it's kind of like an Amazon of China.
Oh, is this the guy finger painting now?
He is now. He's going to join the finger painting club, joining other Chinese tech tycoons who have exited top roles amid China's tech crackdown. President Zhu Lei will take over for Richard Liu, who's gonna. He's recently gotten bit by the finger painting bug over there. They've got going on with the tech tycoons in China. JD's billionaire founder Richard Liu has stepped down as chief executive officer of China's #2 online retailer for the incredible, fast-paced world of finger painting.
Is there like, so that was number one with Alibaba, and number two with JD? Like, is there like a list of like three, four, five, and there's like,
TikTok,
is the progression?
yeah, and Pinduoduo and TikTok founders have both resigned in similar ways. And maybe they're going to have the last laugh, and they're making some truly amazing finger painting based NFTs that they're going to launch in a series of 10,000. Can you imagine
But
the
in China, you can't resell or profit from NFT for now. So
Yeah, the government is cracking down too. So yeah, I don't think they want to get into
yeah,
trouble.
but actually, China is trying to bring up their own blockchain. So in the end, they will still make NFT profitable, but not now. Yeah, they have their own regulation on the road.
They'll have to
the
live out the rest of their days extreme luxury in Macau, just sipping whatever fine wines they have. I feel really bad for these guys.
the next articles from the Wall Street Journal? They say they have sources, and again about China, that the online fast fashion retailer called Shine, Shein. This is huge, like incredibly ridiculously. This is where young ladies are buying stuff these days. By the way, I believe Canada has banned it due to the fact that a lot of the products contain toxic chemicals, strangely. Anyway, Shine has raised between $1 billion and $2 billion in a fundraising round that closed last week, valuing the company at $100 billion. Did I mention it was huge? Shine,
Britain conquered like half the world just to sell people underwear and fancy hats. I mean, looking at the size of the economy of all of Britain for like they're establishing these global empires and comparing it to, $100 billion valuation for, a single company that sells clothes. I mean, it's kind of insane.
just for comparison, this valuation of Shine, which is an app, now would put it as more valuable than H&M and Zara combined. That would be
Lots
the
of Bangladesh fabric being rolled here.
And
that's
how
the
long have they been around?
great question. When did Shine start? Great question. Shine founded October 2008.
That's crazy.
So
And that's also crazy because it's not like they have a full global presence by doing so, right? They did so quite quietly. Shine wasn't even on America's radar until about
by
2014.
by
So they're
comparison,
outpacing Zara like that is amazing.
Zara was founded in 1975, and H&M was founded in 1947.
That's
So
just incredible.
Yeah, it speaks to how new players can actually remove old standing seeming monopolies. So that's good news. I think that shows that there's a lot of demand for newness.
okay, next up,
Now, is Shine 100% digital?
they don't. They must have a few pop-ups and stuff like that, but I mean, you're not finding Shine stores everywhere. It's wildly driven through their app.
Yeah, that's the new model.
Yeah.
But this VC, I mean, valuations, right? Doesn't mean they will be able to. You know what I'm trying to say? It's actually on paper, right?
Mm,
I mean,
it
you have to
should
look at. I mean, if you want to compare them with H&M or Zara, you have to look at their cash flow, right?
well, it shouldn't
Yeah,
be.
that's a good point.
P&L.
It shouldn't. Well, but investors aren't gonna. It shouldn't be valued at significantly less than what the, the public markets would value it at. Like it's not really in the investor's interest to overpay for it.
But the
That's
pattern of
the one
valuing a
buy.
company. 100 times its cash flow, I think, is perhaps something that
My
was
point
set
is,
by Goldman
Right.
Sachs.
it's going to have to IPO at some point, and they're not going to want to have pay more than it's going to IPO for.
Yeah, but they may have imploded before the IPO happens, right?
Well, it is a Chinese company.
Oh, common prosperity. Let's see.
I mean,
Comment.
at this point, when you're at this scale, you can
Free
literally
shoes
throw
for everyone.
state bank resources into helping you list. I mean, it depends on which political favor you have with party members after a certain point.
So the New York Times is reporting that Biden appears to show support for Amazon workers who unionized in Staten Island, saying in a speech, "By the way, Amazon, here we come. Watch." That was his quote. By the way, Amazon, here we come. Watch. The president said, but the White House quickly said his remarks did not mean the government would be getting formally involved. Okay, Wall Street Journal is reporting that Google Play removes dozens of Android apps, including a Muslim prayer app with 10 million downloads after researchers find malware tied to a U.S. defense contractor. Code placed in a consumer-facing apps is tied to U.S. national security contractors, documents show.
It was an unapproved surveillance app. Google doesn't like people competing on their turf unless they're paying them royalties for it.
And that's one of the tricks. That's why there's a lot of free apps out there. Is you are the product, and your data is the product.
But the argument doesn't work because you can pay Apple a fortune, but they'll still host iCloud on Google servers. They'll still turn over data to the same surveillance groups. They'll still scan through all your stuff for illegal activity and such. You can't pay for privacy anymore. The architecture is fundamentally broken.
Chris has a point. So the next one is from the Washington Post that Apple restores the smart voting app run by Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny's supporters in Russia. Apple removed the app after Kremlin threatened its executives based in Moscow with arrest. And essentially, we covered this story when it was breaking as it was happening in real time during the summer, as I recall. There was an app in the App Store for a smart voting app, and this is quite a brilliant campaign that was masterminded by Alexei Navalny's team to help Russians and his supporters outvote Vladimir Putin. And of course, Vladimir Putin was no fan of this smart voting app, so he wanted it pulled from the Apple App Store. So he told Apple, pull the app, and Apple said no. And they said, oh, you have employees who work here in Russia. I hope you don't mind if they disappear. We're going to call them and have some tea. Some of our a very special batch of tea we're going to have with your Apple employees here if you don't remove the app.
Cesium tea.
And then they literally showed up at the Apple executives' homes, is now being reported. And it was at that point, when Apple got those phone calls from their team members in Moscow, that there was these very large gentlemen bringing them very special tea to their homes, that the Apple executives decided to take down this smart voting app. But now Apple's reversed this decision. It says the demands came as voting was about to begin, and both companies complied, meaning Apple and Google. Google later reinstated the app for Android phones soon after the election. Well, yeah, wow, you can have your smart voting app back now that the elections are over. Apple spokesperson declined to comment on the decision. The reversal comes amid escalating tensions between Russia and other outside companies, many of which have withdrawn from the Russian market or curtailed activities there since Russia invaded Ukraine. The civil liberty groups and American officials are pushing the other way, arguing that Apple and other tech companies provide ordinary Russians with the means to find independent news sources and to connect to activists and nonprofit organizations opposed to the war in Ukraine. So Apple's testing the waters again now that the Kremlin's a little preoccupied. So the next one is that Google will roll out Privacy Guide, a guided tour of privacy and security settings in Chrome to all desktop users in coming weeks.
Holes. Advertising company that relies on surveillance rolls out guides so that consumers can pretend like their choices matter.
Indian conglomerate Tata Group rolls out Tata Neu, a super app combining at least 7 services associated with Tata, competing with Geo Platforms and Amazon. And some Reuters reporting that Fetch Rewards, which offers rewards to customers who submit receipts of purchases from more than 600 partners, raises $240 million. Fetch Rewards, as your shopping history is valuable, and now you can get rewarded for sharing your shopping history with Fetch, which offers rewards to customers who submit their receipts of their purchases. Blockchain gaming startup Improbable raises $150 million, which aims to help virtual worlds connect, led by Andreessen Horowitz and SoftBank. Mandiant and CrowdStrike partner to help customers investigate and mitigate threats. Mandiant will begin deploying CrowdStrike's tools. 2 of the most prominent U.S. cybersecurity companies have struck a deal to work more closely together, extending a trend of cooperation among companies. Wired's reporting that new data sharing proposals in Europe push for the expansion of facial recognition and to allow police forces across the EU to link their photo databases. Oh, snap!
Aren't they like protesting this?
Sounds familiar.
Lawmakers advanced proposals to let police forces across the EU link their photo databases, which include millions of pictures of people's faces.
Where's our friendly neighborhood eugenicist Charles when we need him for a news article like this? Like, he's living the whole country with that.
And how exactly does this tie in with GDPR, which they're also so keen on?
Well, they're not going to be sharing, they're only sharing it with each other. Not,
No,
Oh,
not
I'll jump in on that, Dan.
totally
I'll
different.
jump in on that. GDPR is a framework for privacy that is wholly onerous on small businesses. There are exceptions to it, so the police surveillance would be an exception regardless. But they're one of the most heavily surveilled, nations and states. And GDPR is, if you look at what you're really getting, any consumer that wants to go have their information removed or modified from somewhere, good luck finding out where that is. Same as here, you give your information to one app or site, it's then sold to data brokers and it's downstream and everything else. And also back to with these guys connecting, we went over something around that in the U.S. a couple of weeks ago. They're doing is they're building bigger profiles of people. It's not just that they're making their databases more accurate; it's that they're building much more of a pattern of life type profile. So it is actually pretty impactful and kind of scary.
Can we just say that everyone wants to do social credit because it makes for more passive citizenry and just be over with it? It feels like we always have to like go back and forth and use big fancy words. We should just say neo feudalism. Let's do it. I mean, because this is each one of these components creates authoritarian structures that are going to be very, very difficult to remove later. And it's being done without democracy. It's being done without consent. But the fact is that consumer choices are being used as a proxy for that, which doesn't really work. I mean,
Yeah, it's your Chris. To your point on the social credit, this pattern of life direction is um, the surveillance that people don't understand that goes on with from like the whammy technology, the wide area motion stuff, the drone stuff, and then hooking together varying state and local police departments with federal, et cetera. You're creating these huge profiles of people, and they're like it's called pattern of life. So what goes on in an area at a time, or what people are doing in an area at a time, or people are doing, period. So it's getting much more in depth.
I mean, the
I
private sector version is
was
like customer journey orchestration. So, I mean, it's just like you rebrand it for private sector, and suddenly it's legal if it wouldn't be legal for the government to do it. And then when you don't like it on that side, you flip it to the other side and say, "Oh, wait, no, this is a government one. It'd be illegal for private sector to do this." So, whichever one does it, you still are paying the same firms to develop the technology. You're still paying for the same consultants to implement. And I think describing what kind of society we actually want in the future, rather than being all super agile and buying the hottest, latest thing that we think is going to be shiny to achieve short-term objectives, we should seriously be articulating what kind of long-term society we want. Because at the moment, we're heading for a very, very strong direction that I don't think we're going to want our grandkids to live in.
I
Next.
just want to say I took a quick look at the article. I think EU has always been sharing biometric data, fingerprints, DNA data, etc., for criminal investigation, right? I think this article is more about recognizing facial recognition as a reliable source of reference for criminal investigation. That's all.
Okay. Russia's cyber attacks on government, military, logistics, and critical infrastructure have been its biggest military success to date in the war in Ukraine. It's the headline from Foreign Affairs. And a company called Elias Health, which uses voice AI technology to analyze conversations between behavioral health clinicians and their patients, raises 20 million. Aura, which makes a smart ring for personalized sleep and health tracking, says it has raised funding at a 2.5 billion valuation and has sold over 1 million Aura rings. I gotta clap the hands for the team over there at Aura Ring, Petri and everybody who.
Thanks, Tyler. Another awesome session.
Oh no, we're not done. Oh no.
Oh,
That was
sorry.
that was me clapping for Aura.
Premature.
Yes.
I ejected myself from the room prematurely. So that's something I suffer.
The next
Tiger
one.
type.
Wall Street Journal says they have sources that banks, including JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, that's America's three biggest banks essentially, are considering whether to use Zelle as a payment option to compete with Visa and MasterCard. Oh, snap! There we go again. 4 in a row. That's a four for today. We've got Twitter, Facebook with the Zuck Bucks, Apple with the new iOS 15.5 with their new payment plan, and also the banks themselves collaborating to compete with Visa and MasterCard. Everybody and their goddamn dog is trying to get into the payments game and get a little piece of that sweet, sweet payment pie. There you have it. 4. All in the same day. Did I not say they're all happening at the same time? I did, and they are. That's what's happening. So,
Oh,
Senator.
Monica is on stage. She's the payment queen, right?
Yes. Welcome back, Monica.
Thank
Have
you.
you have you noticed that everybody and their dog is trying to get into the payments game?
Yes, Tyler, it's going to be a lot of fun and it's going to be a very, very problematic, but it's going to be fun.
Wait,
Do you,
Monica, are you in Indonesia now, by the way?
We'll be there shortly.
Safe journey.
Thank you.
Senator Patrick Toomey introduces a bill to regulate stablecoins, including defining a payment stablecoin, creating a license for issuers, and more. Amazon will increase its Music Unlimited plan on Prime from $8 a month to $9 a month. And a report finds over 50 U.S. gig workers were murdered while working since 2017. The families say Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, and others offer little support. Meta won't
A
hold.
really crazy TV show for gig worker crime scenes like CSI. Gig worker economy.
Oh yeah, the dark side of the gig. The gig is up. The Meta won't hold its annual F8 developer conference in 2022. Instead, it's holding Conversations with a capital C, a business messaging event on May 19th. That's right around the corner. And an AR VR event later this year. So no more F8 developer conference this year. In a court authorized operation last month in March, the FBI cut off the servers of the Cyclops Blink botnet tied to Russia's Sandworm. There you go. OpenAI releases DAL E2, a high
It's
resolution.
amazing, Tyler. If you can post a link to this or pin it
Yeah,
to the room, it's incredible to see
I
this
was I
stuff.
was watching it today myself. It is mind blowing. It's a higher resolution, lower latency version of its text to image generation program with new capabilities. And I will pin a link so that you can see this. And essentially, one of the fun things that I've seen friends already doing with it is inputting Twitter accounts as the input and telling it to take the bios of these Twitter accounts and create images based on the bios. Twitter bios, converting Twitter bios into images. And it's, and it creates these images just based on the text in the Twitter bio. And my God, does it come up with totally brilliant, impressive, funny images, image illustrations based on the bios. It's unbelievable. It's really,
I'd be
really.
I was getting images right now, or some of these other ones like Pond 5 or something.
Yeah, so what you can do is put in any kind of text input and it'll generate an image output. And it's shocking. So, for example, in the link that I just pinned to the top of the room, the text input example that they give, I think The Verge put in a text input of Sheena Inu dog wearing a beret and a black turtleneck, right? Kind of a
It's
ridiculous.
fabulous.
And it generates the image as if you spent hours on Photoshop with.
If you click on the first link on the article, you can go a little more in depth. They have some fantastic interactive stuff. It's like a few thousand photos. You can like scroll through this stuff. It's absolutely amazing.
Another example they gave, the first image in the article is that text input was teddy bears mixing sparkling chemicals as mad scientists steampunk. And sure enough, it makes that image, like in an incredibly impressive way. And again, almost with humor. It's totally freaking brilliant. You no longer have to search for canonical historical images of things. You can create images in real time based on your imagination. This is the beginnings of the fucking holodeck, is what this is.
Another thing to say is that right now this is still bound by certain computational parameters. It's like the first generation of this sort of thing. This resembles more science than engineering at this point because they're still trying to work out basic principles. But a more optimized version, dedicated hardware, scaled up processors, etc. A lot of what video is, animation, etc., is you just storyboard the frames out and you interpolate between them. So if you can do a time series with this sort of thing, there is a progression pathway to go from these sorts of algorithms, especially if they can establish temporal coherence, to getting video off of this stuff. Which, I mean, we're approaching some crazy, crazy futures with this sort of thing.
So
Has anybody got a link? Sorry, Tyler. Has anybody got a link to an actual demo where we can try it? Because we saw similar promise with OpenAI. Sorry, with GPT-3's
It's
codex.
within the page, yeah.
you have to.
They have like generate output with things, but there's a few thousand things, so you get a pretty good feeling for it. One of the things that's interesting is the reason they're saying we're not releasing it to everyone just yet. Is that they say that they're concerned about some of the political implications with stuff, which I think is actually somewhat reasonable. However, a large number of people have gotten access to it and are using it to generate things, so the tech works. It's just they're being a little cagey at who's getting to play with it.
Yeah, but with Codex, they said the tech worked, and you look at the demo and they type they ask it to write code and it writes code. But when you actually get it in your hand, you can't get it to do what they want in the demo unless you do exactly what they did in the demo. You do anything different, it does something very different.
I mean,
So
I have really big.
so my question is, how cherry picked are these results?
I don't think they are. I have friends who have access, and they inputted Twitter bios and showed the results, and they were equally impressive as this article. The other example in this article, and this is a journalist who's just throwing in inputs, and the third example that the journalist gives is a bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool, and I'll be goddamned, the image result is exactly that. It looks like a bowl of soup that looks like a monster knitted out of wool. And to Chris's point, as impressive as these images are, and they look like actual real images, they don't look like they were photoshopped. It looks like somebody took a camera of something that existed. That's what's so kind of shocking about it.
Tyler,
Yes.
if I may add something, this is Dolly version 2. This is not Dolly version 1. So, and there is a wait list if you want to try the API yourself. It's quite simple to write the code to generate whatever you want, but you need to get subscribed to their API.
Right.
We're in an industry that has an enormous amount of hype, and we have to use a certain amount of cynicism to, kind of counteract that because the valuations are always crazy and everything else like that. There are other times where there's certain sectors that are almost underappreciated for the implications and such. This is one of those exceptions, I would say, because this is actually, when you understand what's actually going on behind the scenes for it, it actually makes it more impressive. This is actually an understatement about the full implications of the technology, because when you look at some of the more recent algorithms for like 3D reconstructions, the ability to infer missing objects, etc., for object ontologies and such, you're looking at being able to create computational logic off of these things. And when you have that baked into an AI chip from the beginning with some of the like Cerebrus style technologies, when you have the ability to have this in persistent vision, being able to wear these devices, like Tyler was referring to earlier, like Google having to wear things, having wearable devices, augmented reality, etc. What you're looking is a stack that allows you to manipulate reality as you perceive it and do it in real time. We are getting very, very close to this in a version where we're already crossing thresholds where many skilled technologists cannot differentiate between whether or not it's an algorithm or an artist that's creating these things. And if
Don't we?
that's happening on the skilled technologist front, the general public is screwed.
Don't we already have a stack that generates the reality as you see in real time? Is it called the Russian media?
Mhm. And
Haha!
Russian media requires people to maintain, requires large, complex propaganda apparatuses and distribution points, etc. This is something that right now requires a server farm the size of a small warehouse, but with the technology boost that you're looking at, eventually it's something you can run on your pocket. So you only need about 5 or 10 years worth of AI improvements to get to that point, and so the cost point for generating those sorts of propaganda, that sort of reality altering hardware and software, that's the thing that's becoming ridiculously accessible. Imagine deep fake technology where it's not just something that requires training data for carefully calibrated celebrities, but general purpose algorithms that can create anything you can imagine. The artistic potentials are incredible. You're looking at 5 year olds able to outperform entire teams of Pixar or VFX LucasArts animators, but you're going to have this capability as a normal thing. It's going to get really, really strange here.
Well, I
That's
think,
actually. Sorry,
sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
just going to throw in and just say that it's kind of quirky that we were just talking about Google Lens because it's almost kind of like the opposite, where, what was it? With the image, you correlate it into words, and this one, words correlate into images, and combined, oh my God, it's going to be crazy.
As a very just brief point philosophically, all the people have been putting captions on photos for the last 20 years of the internet. Everyone collectively contributed to this giant project that's now being put into into some of these AI models. One day, if they ever figure out how to attribute who contributed what, is going to be a very interesting thing. At the moment, it all goes into the giant model, and no one quite knows where anything came from, but it still kind of works. I think in the future, when you start looking at artists and people that are newly out of a job, and we still like to have some of those people around, maybe not in the same capacities, you're going to start seeing a reevaluation of the legal principles of the training data sets. Because right now, we're not even Wild West. We don't even have to be able to conceive of that this stuff exists. So it's going to be really, really interesting thing in the near future.
just want to
Well,
highlight
when we start,
hold on,
if
Eric.
I'm okay, go
Hold
ahead.
on, Eric. I just want to highlight the amount of improvement that was made in a relatively short amount of time between the previous and this version, the new version of Dolly 2 that we're gushing over today, and extrapolate that forward in time, and then within and conceivably the time intervals will shorten as they tend to do with these things, and we'll be doing Star Trek holodecks, in our lifetime at this rate. That's what's so crazy, kind of projecting forward. Sorry,
There's
Eric.
a
Go.
2 minute papers. Strongly recommend people look it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Papers. It has some of the best coverage in the sector on this. And what's crazy is you can see visually, just because it's been going for like 7 years or so, you can visually see the progress of the field, and it's shocking to see how fast it improves.
So, Chris, I was literally just tweeting 2 minute papers to Tech News, just so that you could reshare it if you want. It's exactly the place to stay up to date with exactly this stuff in a pretty human digestible format. So, yeah, thank you. You just beat me to the post, but I have tweeted it.
What a time to be alive!
So the first version when they launched Dolly was January 2021. So we're just barely more than a year since the last one, and they show before and afters. They do comparisons of DALL-E 1 and DALL-E 2 side by side, and they only give one example there, but it would be really cool to see a deeper dive on the comparisons. The photorealistic stuff is shockingly good, like, and they highlight that in the little click through examples that you can click through, where you can click on the object and then the environment and then the style. So you can have an astronaut, and then you can pick, you have three different objects: an astronaut, a teddy bear, and a bowl of soup. And you can then push those into different scenarios, like riding a horse or lounging in a tropical resort in space or playing basketball with cats. And then you can see it in a photorealistic style, a style of Andy Warhol, or as a pencil drawing. And when you do the photorealistic style, that's, to me, the really impressive bit. Yeah, because a whole lot of photoshopping is more photorealistic in nature. Anyway, go ahead.
It'll be interesting to see where this goes. I think one direction I see this going is animation. So imagine being able to just say a sentence or a phrase. So I think this is going in that direction, because right now animation is notoriously difficult. It's still very much like a surgical art,
Time
and
consuming.
exactly, yeah. And if we can reduce the amount of time, especially for animating characters, their body movements, their facial expressions, I think that'll lower the barrier to entry for a lot of artists and animators. So I think that'll
Well,
make for a lot of good entertainment.
I think a different way to approach the answer to that question, it's a great question. Where is this going? And inevitably, the answer to where things are going is whatever the far reaches of human imagination are. And our deepest desire is the ability to create whatever we imagine in real time, so that we can share our imaginations and our internal visions with each other in real time, like a shared holodeck experience, right? Where I can actually see what you're seeing, so that you don't have to go through the laborious task of converting it into mouth sounds, which is incredibly low bit rate. And it's left with me to forces me to imagine what the hell you're seeing in your mind's eye. Why can't we have kind of a shared telepathy? That's really what we want. We want shared telepathy, because when we have that, we will then realize that we are, a kind of a united organism of sorts. And so, and by the way, people experience that in doses of, various psychedelics as well. That's kind of the whole point of that. So if we take that as a given, that we're going to continue to make progress on this until we are able to have this sort of shared mind meld, holodeck, visual telepathy, make no mistake, we will continue to make progress until we get there. And that's what I love about this example is, when you can say, show me a lounge chair with a corgi, smoking a pipe, and it does it in a very photorealistic way. Well, now I'm able to create what's in my mind's eye and share it with you in a very short amount of time. And you can imagine meetings in some distant future where nearly every meeting and phone call we have for productive purposes is one person has, multiple people have visions, and a lot of time and energy is spent communicating what one person is imagining to the other people in the room, so that they can comment on that original person's imagination or vision. I, as an event producer, am constantly having meetings explaining, here's what the event is going to look like on day one, and here's what's going to happen at this party on day two, and then here, and then trying to sell that vision and getting them to agree to participate and spend money as part of that vision. And imagine if I could go into a shared holodeck with them and be like, here's what we're going to do on day one. And then we could dynamically, in real time, edit the environment like a Unity or Epic Unreal Engine that we can control with our goddamn fucking thoughts rather than with user interfaces. That's where we're going, to answer your question. Where we're going is, the closest that thing we have today is Unity or Unreal Engine and the video game and VR, AR environment development. But imagine being able to create Unity VR environments with the simplicity of DALL-E 2, where it's just very simple inputs, or maybe it's even more complex inputs. You just talk in real time and it's constantly updating as fast as you can. But imagine we don't no longer are encumbered by forcing ourselves to use text or even speech. As soon as we can do the brain computer interface to the development engine, then we're really off to a start. Then
Yeah,
it really
39
does.
bits a second for words, right? Human speech is only 39 bits per second, so that's very low. So if we can increase that, that's definitely awesome.
Well, tying into that, so one of the things that's less appreciated on this paper, and they cover a lot of different features from painting to being able to make objects move and move them around and get to the shadows and everything. There's a lot of more subtle details on that's actually more core to how it actually works. But one of the less appreciated parts on here that I'm kind of looking at is they talk about text to speech, but many general adversarial networks, and this is actually, I think this is more transformer style, but I need to look more at how they implement it. But the thing is that many of these networks have a property of being bidirectional. So not only does it take text and generates really, really, really good images off of it, the network has such an understanding of it, it's able to do the opposite, where it can take an image and create a really, really, really good annotation and caption from that. Now, if that speed can be increased to the point where it can be run in real time, for people that lack vision, that can be people that are blind or visually impaired, or even people that aren't physically able to observe a scene, but they need to have some sort of description of it. We're going to have very soon the ability for very high-end sensors to be able to describe the environment and transmit it in a very concise way. So the visual way that the world that we live in and communicate with, we can have computers able to interact and have a much more nuanced understanding of the scene geometry, a much more nuanced thing of the social dynamics, etc. Those are going to be things that are going to be able to be expressed. So flash forward with me a little bit. So we've got an IoT device that's out there. It's taking a picture, a video of an environment. It's maybe a surveillance camera, whatever. Imagine it can actually describe what it's looking at, but it's able to use this rich visual imagery that we're currently using to generate these images. But it's able to go the other way, where it can actually artistically describe what it's looking at in a way that actually causes things to be noticeable and easy to work with. But then you come to the other side of this, where it's interesting. You were describing earlier, Tyler, Twitter profiles being made where you take a bio and you put into and then you've got thing. Compare the compression density of sending a single sentence of describing a teddy bear, and at the other side you have, it's a 1,000 pixel, 1,000 by 1,000 pixel image coming out the other side. But if you apply some of the 4K and style upscaling techniques that they have deployed in TVs and NVIDIA graphics cards right now, it's shipped consumer product, where you're taking input and then it arbitrarily upsizes it to an arbitrary resolution because we've gotten so good at doing that inferencing. What that means is you can start having tiny little text messages that can generate the 4K, 8K, 16K images out the other side. This is ridiculous. You can completely transform how our communication systems work with this sort of technology being standardized. So
Chris,
we're still in the
you'll
science
get a
stages, but
teddy
the
bear,
engineering
not
on this next part is going to be fascinating.
you'll get a teddy bear, not the teddy bear though. Which is, I mean, it is an amazing enabler for compression, especially if you have a closed loop where you can say, "Hey, give me a teddy bear." No, no, green. Exactly like we're talking about. No, 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 smaller. No, no, fluffier. Cool. That's it. Yes, absolutely. If you have a loop like that, then you can compress the hell out of things, and it could be an amazing future video compression. But if it's real time and one way, you're going to end up with something. You're going to end up with a teddy bear, not the teddy bear, if you see what I mean. But
Looking
the
at the
point,
cookies on that page is a really good example of that principle in action. There's a cookie example on there where they show cookies and milk, and it shows like
they do.
literally hundreds of examples of cookies and milk, and they're all basically the same thing, but they're all slightly different from each other.
Sorry, I've got shitty reception here. The real time aspect, as well, briefly going back to Tyler's, is the idea that you can communicate from your mind to other people's minds using this intermediary of what's effectively an artist. You can do today with enough time, right? You could say to a digital artist, give me a cat wearing a whatever, a cat in ballet shoes, and the next day or 2 days later they could come back with something, and then you could say no, tweak it, and a day later they could come back. But there's a speed, a real-time threshold you get to, which you can then communicate at the speed of your thoughts, which I think you were alluding to, Tyler, which makes all the difference. And now it's suddenly a useful tool, and it's getting you results quick enough that what you're thinking of hasn't slipped out of your own mind. So I think it's a really interesting frontier.
Well,
Chris,
going
I
a
have.
little, sorry, I was saying
Oh,
going
go
a little abstract with simulation theory that they say that we more likely live in one than not. I just feel like this is another loop just layering more on top. assuming that, yeah, we might be living in one. And what we're creating with an AI and the capability to do would just add another layer based on everything we've just described. Because, AI has always been an existential threat, and machines were first presented as something that can take care of the linear tasks that we see as a waste of our time. But, where we kind of pride ourselves is, oh, yeah, they do the linear stuff. We can focus on things like creativity and creation, but that's getting taken over either. So you really come to think, as humans, what are we here for at that point, right? We're kind of rendering ourselves more and more obsolete. Now we're kind of just becoming like Wall-E, right? Where it seems like the only purpose we're going to be left with is to just consume.
10 years ago, they actually, at the World Economic Forum, they sat down the world's leading experts of AI, the technologists, anyone you've ever heard of that's done anything in the space. And they sat them all down and with some of those powerful people in the world, the wealthiest, and all these people that run these corporations in Davos, and they said, tell us what the future of AI brings. And they had big Oxford studies, and they said, we've run through every job title in existence. But you know what? According to all the experts we've talked to, there is not a future where human beings have to worry about creative fields or things that require social nuance. These are not things we have that AI is going to be able to do. It's only going to be the manual labor jobs that AI is going to have to going to automate. So ultimately, if you restructure your economies, if you create some fancy, sexy business districts downtown that have creative class workers, those are safe from automation. Invest your resources in this way. And it's crazy about this, how in 10 years, how much that has been turned on its head, where it turns out that robots still need a little bit more time to, work out this sort of thing. But anything you can put over the internet, you can generate a data set with. So we have general purpose algorithms that can automate human creativity. This has very real ramifications for how governments are run, how businesses are run, and how resources are allocated. And it's really, really important to note how far off and how wrong even the most brilliant leaders in the field weren't able to foresee 5 to 10 years in the future. So any predictions you hear right now about what's going to happen 5, 10 years from now, I would just say check the track record, because we have not been able to predict this accurately leading up into this time period.
And on
And
the
if
topic of,
AI becomes
sorry, go ahead.
ambitious, that's also a problem.
And on the topic of time, it seems, I've heard it said that at the moment AI can pretty much make any decision that a human can make in under a second. But that's starting to really, that boundary is starting to really be pushed out, right? You can even see with these generative images. So the other lens to look at this through is how long would it take a human to do this thing or make this decision? And as that boundary goes out and out in time, at some point, it's going to overtake us.
It doesn't need to be a perfect replica or overtake a human being. Even getting to 80 or 90%, 70%, that's economically viable. You can fire 1 out of 10. You can fire 9 out of 10 people and then just replace it with a pretty good robot approximation. So we're going to have economic consequences long before we hit the philosophical ones.
Okay, I want to jump into more tweets here that people are sharing. BB shared this one from South China Morning Post, that Chinese AI turns commercial satellite into precise spy tracker,
For stealth jets.
able to follow small objects with precision. Paper details teams work creating AI to continue tracking an object on the ground even after it turns sharply or disappears into a tunnel.
They note in that article that they say, look, we can track F-22s, which are supposedly stealthy. That's a warning shot right there for some very expensive military hardware.
BB also shares this one from The Verge, that hacking group posted fake Ukrainian surrender messages, says Facebook in a new report. The adversarial threat report also notes an uptick in domestic influence campaigns mounted by repressive regimes, quote unquote. I wonder, are they talking about Norway again? With these repressive regimes, who exactly are they talking about?
They just give out too much free healthcare. It's terrifying.
The fake Ukrainian surrender messages. That old gag. Just like the dropped leaflets. Some things never change. The next is containers are stacking up at China's ports as lockdown blocks trucks. Containers full of frozen food and chemicals are piling up at China's biggest ports in Shanghai as the lockdown of the city and virus testing means truckers can't get to the ports.
If anyone takes a look at some of the graphs on this, you can have to look for them a little bit, but it's actually they show like the last 10 years or so, even showing during the lockdowns of COVID, the first round or two, Like it spikes a bit and then it goes back down. The stuff they're going through right now, it is shockingly, it's like 3 or 4 times larger, like delay times and loading times than they had even during the height of the prior lockdown. So it's pretty bad. We're gonna feel in America what give it like a 2 or 3 week delay kind of thing. It's gonna be nuts.
So P.T. Yoder found this one from The Guardian that mushrooms communicate with each other using up to 50 words. Scientists claim. Professor theorizes electrical impulses sent by mycological organisms could be similar to human language. They might even be fucking hip-hopping, y'all, these mushrooms.
Who pays for this research, and what is the other studies they have?
I
I
want to
mean,
know. Are they doing TikTok videos in the fucking mushroom world? What's going on?
Do we have to do copious amounts to hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mushrooms told them to do it.
on every single research paper, there's a line you put at the very end. Because everyone's going for grants, and you say further research is required. It's like, yes, we need more shrooms to study the shrooms.
Yeah, but on a serious note, I mean, I think what they're talking about is the mycelium layer here, and I mean, how they can get to words is a whole different thing. But the mycelium layer, which is the mushrooms under and all the trees, et cetera, they do communicate. There's a lot of studies around that. As where's water and giving stuff to their, their own tree offspring, et cetera. But use of words is hilarious.
Here we go. Mathematical analysis of the electrical signals fungi seemingly send to one another has identified patterns that bear a striking structural similarity to human speech. Previous research has suggested that fungi conducted electrical impulses through long underground filamentous structures called hyphae, similar to how nerve cells transmit information in humans. It has even shown that the firing rate of these impulses increases when the hyphae of wood-digesting fungi come into contact with wooden blocks, raising the possibility that fungi use this electrical language to share information about food or injury with distant parts of themselves or with hyphae-connected partners such as trees.
I'm just imagining the mushroom whisperer of the future.
Here's the quote. We do not know if there is a direct relationship between spiking patterns in fungi and human speech, possibly not. On the other hand, there are many similarities in informational processing in living substrates of different classes, families, and species. I was just curious to compare. There's also another option. They are saying nothing, he said. Propagating mycelium tips are electrically charged, and therefore when the charged tips pass in a pair of differential electrodes, a spike in the potential difference is recorded. Okay.
Actually has really big implications if we can work out what if they are communicating what they're talking about, because it
Well,
could
let's
point
do
to
this.
two things.
Hang on.
Like this. Oh,
What if we
sorry, keep
connect
going.
them up? Let's connect them up to the Dolly too, and find out what they're saying, and then they could tell us what they really want to say.
Mushroom net.
Because I think the implication is kind of like, if we can figure out what they're saying, one, it could actually be really useful for understanding what's happening in the environment, right? Because they're so largely connected that if there's a shift in a way that's unhealthy, we could probably maybe see it way before. And then on a second quirkier note is, if what they're communicating about isn't just purely for survival, and it's like, hey, how's your day going, man? That would show another layer of sentience, which is kind of cool and creepy at the same time.
I'm just imagining a 1980s film as like the mushrooms are talking. What are they saying? Feed me.
I think they're doing acapella type cool stuff.
You
A
want to play a
cappella?
tech you want to play a Tech News Jeopardy?
Sure, go ahead.
What is the largest living thing on Earth?
Oh, the pando trees.
Anyone else want to guess?
It's a large bunch of trees
Only
Aspen.
Aspen.
Yep.
that are
Yeah.
connected under the ground. Yeah, and
More. Troy, more guesses, please.
largely in the Vancouver area, if I recall correctly.
Nope.
A fungus?
No, it's the pando trees.
Any more?
That's what I heard was the trees.
Okay. I pin it on top of the room now from Business Insider. Fungus is correct.
Dun
Largest
dun
living
dun.
organism, fungus. So no determined a colony.
Great for
And it's hidden from view.
Given the recent advances with neuromorphic chips enabling two-way communication with synapses, it might be interesting to have a conversation with a mushroom.
You can have
So,
literal mushrooms on the brain.
Here we go. How a fungus in a tree translated. A question. NPR asks a question. What's the largest creature on Earth? And they answer it as the trees. But I'm trying to find an article that is familiar with both the pando trees and also the Armillaria ostoye fungus.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, the pandos is 2,200 acres. How big is the Armillaria ostoye fungus? More than 2,000 acres? What's the Wikipedia say?
1,500.
Well, then it's come on. That was where do they get off with that? Anyway, so the next article is from BB from Reuters. It says that U.S. solar expansion is being stalled by rural land use protests. Solar farms are under attack as a blight on the landscape. Social media fueled campaigns are blocking land use permits. Utility scale projects require far more land than comparable fossil fuel plants. So U.S. solar expansion is meeting a lot of headwinds, no pun intended, and what a tragedy we can't get out of our own way of hitting the fucking iceberg at full speed. The next one's from PT Yoder about and many people are sending in articles about this hot new app. A new social media app called Be Real is trending on college campuses and is ranking in the top 10 of the most popular apps in recent days. Essentially, at a varying time each day, the Be Real users receive a single notification in mass prompting them to take 2 photos. Everyone is given 2 minutes to take the photos, and then everyone can see what everyone else is doing right now. With no filters, Be Real gives users a brief window once a day to post candid, unglamorous photos at an unscheduled time so everyone can see what everyone else is doing who they follow right now. Now, I am particularly fond of this idea because I started briefly, as a result of a little hackathon with some friends, an app that isn't so different. Jesus, 2009, so 13, 14 years ago. And the premise was very similar. Everyone gets a notification once a day at a somewhat random time to with a particular word. And it's a photo competition, and everyone can see everyone else's entry for taking that photo of that word. So the word could be bird, and everyone takes a photo that represents the word bird, and then they are instantly voted and ranked as everyone reviews them in a Tinder swiping way. People upvote them, and then you can see who had the best top 10 or 50, in a TikTok fashion. You get to see all the best entries for the bird for that day. And then the next day, it's some other topic, and on and on and on. The next day, the word is, Hungary or Ukraine or, whatever. And then, of course, you could have sponsors like Starbucks pay to have coffee as the word of the day and whatever. So, anyway, that was the idea, but we never did that. It never
Here
went
comes
through.
Google Lens going, hey, let's be best friends.
Yeah. The next is from Evan about a company called Off Grid Box. The box provides clean water and electricity anywhere in a little miniature shipping container. Water supply, electricity, anywhere, anytime. It's called Off Grid Box. So I'm retweeting that now from our friend Evan, and it's solar powered and wind powered. And the box delivers clean water and power from the sun anywhere in a little shipping container. So no doubt it's got a atmospheric water generator built into it, and it's taking the power from the solar and the wind and pulling the humidity out of the air, turning that into water. and also along with some electricity. So you get power and water from the sun and the wind. There you go. The next one is from Dr. Fran, that Epic and Lego partner to build a metaverse for kids. We covered that one. Evan also shares that Meta wants to make a new digital currency called Zuckbucks. We covered that one. The BBC reporting about Hydra, how German police dismantled the Russian darknet called Hydra. German police say illegal sales on the site amounted to at least 1 billion British pounds per year. And now it's the servers have been confiscated. Twitter's edit button isn't just a simple fix, it could be a mistake, according to the Wall Street Journal. The social network is experimenting with letting users tweak their tweets, just as new board member Elon Musk and millions of other users have requested. And they're already predicting that it's going to be a huge headache, and it might be. And if it is, they'll walk it back. Big deal. Give it a shot. Let's see what happens. The next is that fuel worth more than about $300,000 was stolen from a high-security Royal Navy base. The diesel fuel was siphoned from a tanker in a heist that reportedly ran for weeks, with most of it having been flogged on the black market or sold on the black market. And that only brings us to the last 6 hours of tweets. So I still have 18 hours of more tweets to get to. So my apologies to everybody who tweeted things more than 6 hours ago. Although one of the tweets we didn't cover is that Chipotle is going into the metaverse. But we will wait until tomorrow and get into more of these awesome tweets. So if you had a good one that I didn't get into, share it again for tomorrow. And we look forward to doing it again tomorrow on a special Friday edition. So thank you to everybody for another Tech News
Thank
Around